In a world where voices are silenced,
Please.
one man refuses to lie down.
It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done.
He's been punted not once,
40 years they've been trying.
not twice,
You couldn't fire somebody if they were horrible, doing a terrible job.
but 3 times.
You're fired.
He doesn't tell you what to think, but gives you something to think about. Welcome to the Bonafide Podcast with Luke Bona. And he's not
All right, here we go.
done
Hold your ears, folks.
yet.
It's showtime.
Well, g'day and welcome to another Bonafide. I was going to think if I had something smart to say. I don't. It's run out. My brain's run out. G'day and welcome to another Bonafide Podcast with me, Luke Bona. It is episode 118. It's the podcast where we don't tell you what to think, but we love to give you something to think about. And the discussions we have here work best when you guys out there get involved. We want your opinion, so make sure you leave us a voicemail or send us an email with your thoughts on guests you'd like us to get on the podcast.
And also what you
Yeah.
think of the opinions shared on today's podcast. Luke, what's the number?
Oh, just off the top of my head, 0291289311. I need my glasses to read that because you put it on the bottom of my screen. So remember to follow and subscribe to the show on whatever app you listen to. It really does help us find a new audience. And remember, the merch store is open now. It was your Poppy's birthday yesterday, and he and your granny are big listeners to the podcast now. And your granny said they want a coffee cup.
Well, they could buy it themselves.
Oh, come on.
No,
It's your Poppy and your granny.
no, they
they're-
could buy. We don't play favourites around here, Luke.
You got to look after Poppy and Granny.
Well, they can send us in an interesting story, and they might win a mug.
Oh, you're a tough old thing.
Hey, I'm my mother's daughter.
You are. She would say the same. You know, your Poppy and Granny, every year you went to school, they bought you new school shoes. Did you know they've done that all these years?
Yeah, they took us to the store.
Well, they didn't ask you to pay. They gave you school shoes. You can give them a coffee cup.
We'll see. I'll see if I can pull some strings.
You are the string. There are no other strings. There's only one string and you're it. Coming up, the Battle of the Davids. David Shoebridge, Senator David Shoebridge from the Greens, and David Littleproud, who was leader of the Nationals, but he's our man on the inside.
One of our men on the inside.
We've got a few of them.
Yeah.
You know the shark attacks that we've seen around Australia, particularly that terrible shark attack on that woman at Coogee. Why are we seeing more shark attacks? Statistically, we are. It's not our imagination. We are seeing way more shark attacks, and there are several reasons why. We're going to talk to a shark expert, Dr. Daryl MacPhee from Bond University, who has some really interesting things to say about all of this and some interesting thoughts on prevention, shark attack prevention. That is coming up. Also, what the hell is going on in the Middle East? On again, off again, on again, off again. We thought the Strait of Hormuz was ready to be open to shipping. It's now closed. It just gets, well, I can't keep up with it. And there are school holidays about to happen around Australia where the price of petrol traditionally has always gone up. How much fuel are we actually storing in Australia as of today? How many days worth? The IEA says we're going to have 90 days. We've never had that. So how much fuel have we got and at what price are we going to be paying for it? We'll talk to Peter Khoury about developments in the Middle East and our fuel supply. And that goes for diesel because it's very important for the trucking industry. That's coming up. And we'll segue into Truckie Tuesday with Rod Hannifey.
Something to think about, something to laugh about. We're talking.
Have you heard the big story today, Kelsey, that Australia's biggest ever cocaine bust has happened at Richmond, west of Sydney? Listen to this. 2.7 tonnes of cocaine.
Can you put that in a metric that I understand? Like, how much is that? How much is a ton?
It's 2.7 tonnes. I can tell you how much it's worth on the street. You ready for this? nearly $1 billion worth of cocaine, street value.
Whoa.
$816 million worth street value. And it was found on a semi-rural property. Listen to this, Kelsey. It was found in a shipping container, but the shipping container was buried. It was underground, but the shipping container had a false bottom in it, so there was another underground bunker under the shipping container. And the AFP, along with our security networks, have obviously, I don't know how long it has taken them to find this and bring about arrests. It's amazing how all of this works. But it's a hell of a lot of cocaine. It's the biggest cocaine bust in Australia's history.
Wow.
And the fact of the matter is, Australians pay more for cocaine than almost any other country.
Yeah.
And therefore the incentive is for people to bring it into the country because they get more bang for their buck. They make more profit.
And also they cut it with...
Well, they probably cut it with
Light
washing powder. I don't know. But what this bust is going to put the price up even further, which is an even bigger incentive for overseas criminals to bring it into the country. 2.7 tonnes, about $816 million worth on the street.
2.7 tonnes is around... Tons is around 371 regulation bowling balls.
It's a hell of a lot of cocaine. My information is your average cocaine snorter pays about $300 a gram. Is that right?
That's correct.
What the word on the street is with your mob?
Yeah, that's correct.
So a gram is what?
Oh, it's a tiny amount. It's a tiny, tiny, tiny amount. Even 2 tablespoons would be cutting it.
Unbelievable. Well, watch this space. But there's somebody that I'm going to get on the podcast, Kelsey, very soon, and you'll hear about him when I talk to David Littleproud. It's a colleague of David's, Pat Conahan, who was the member for Cowper, who spent many years as an undercover detective with the police. Oh. And he will have a very interesting story on this, how the police would have gone about securing this bust. But he's also got some fascinating stories on what life is like as an undercover detective. And I'm looking forward to that. That's coming up down the track on the Bonafide podcast. I cannot wait to talk to him. Hey, I got a message from my darling daughter who is in South Africa at the moment. She flies with Qantas, as you know, and she's in Joburg. She's having a meal break, and she's in this steakhouse in Johannesburg, and it's called the Trump Steakhouse. Anyway, Trump Bar, Ribs and Grill. And she sent me a photo of the menu. And on the front of the menu is a picture of a picture of the steaks you can buy. She says, hey, Dad, what should I get? Should I get the fillet, the ribeye, or the sirloin? What would I like? And I said, Scotch fillet or get a T-bone. Or she said, what about the fillet steak? I said, well, if you get the T-bone, you get 2 steaks in one.
Yeah.
She said, question mark? Well, the big side of a T-bone is sirloin, and that little part of the T-bone is fillet. You get 2 steaks in one with a T-bone.
Oh.
Oh.
There you go.
So sirloin, question mark. Sirloin is often called porterhouse, or it's often called a New York cut. They're all the same. The 3 different names mean the same cut of meat, sirloin.
Yeah.
Get a thick one with the lovely fatty tail. Yum, she says. And now here's another picture of the whole menu. My fucking God. And you know what's at the top of the menu?
What?
Deer, and then ostrich.
Oh, you can get an ostrich fillet?
You can get ostrich. Ostrich fillet medallions, 400 grams. Experience the unique flavour of this lean and healthy red meat. Our ostrich fillet is expertly grilled, showcasing its delicate texture and rich, slightly sweet flavour. So I showed this to your mum, and all the steaks are there, and there's ribs and everything. She said, I would have gone for the ostrich.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, no. Mum would. I wouldn't.
Trump's oxtail and beef ribs. There's 2 more pages of what's at the grill house, the combinations, half pork ribs, queen prawns, full pork ribs, queen prawns. But the
Where's
thing
this
that gets,
going, Luke?
Well, I'm just saying, they have ostrich, and it's at the top of the menu. It's their specialty.
This is breaking news, is it?
It's breaking news. So there's a picture of what she'd ordered.
Oh, it looks delicious.
Yeah. And she says that she ended up, there's more pictures, 400-gram ribeye with thick creamy mushroom sauce, creamed spinach and sweet pumpkin.
Delicious.
So there we go. Trump's Steakhouse in Johannesburg. Top of the menu, Ostrich.
Ostrich. Speaking of Trump, Luke, what's going on in Iran?
No one knows. JD Vance doesn't know. He's saying one thing and then another. This whole thing was supposed to be signed in Switzerland last Friday. The problem now is that Hezbollah, which is funded and supported by Iran, are still throwing bombs from Lebanon into Israel.
Israel threw the first bombs into Lebanon first. That's how the ceasefire ended, was because Israel bombed Lebanon.
Well, Israel's saying it's because Hezbollah is throwing bombs into them. He said, she said. So
they're all a bit bomb happy.
They're all a bit, it's very bomb happy. It's the bombest happiest place in the world. Imagine, just for 1 second, imagine living there. Imagine having air raid sirens going off all the time.
It's like, it would probably be similar to people that live in Tornado Valley in America. They they don't really take the tornado sirens seriously anymore because they hear them so often.
Imagine living in that kind of environment. I guess the people in far north Queensland have cyclones all the time and they're kind of used to it. But you've got hurricanes in the south of America, and then you've got the tornadoes in the Midwest and the Mideast. And then here in Australia, we've got tropical cyclones. It's a strange old world, isn't it?
Sorry, I'm going on a bit of a side quest here.
Bing bong.
Yeah, but did you know that, and I'm sure the farmers that listen to this podcast would be so across this, there is an El Nino expected to, the whole weather system is about to be really messed up.
Is it a Nina or a Nino? Are you sure it's not a Nino?
So as of mid-May 2026, sea surface temperature anomalies are increasing across the central, eastern, equatorial Pacific, indicating an ongoing warming pattern that may support an El Nino development. Luke, so you're right, El Nino.
El Nino, you said Nina.
I know, sorry.
I'll get someone from the bomb to come on and explain El Nino, Nino, and what it's all about.
Remember that dust storm that we had ages ago? Mm-hmm. That was due to an El Nino, so it kind of means hotter, drier conditions, which is not good for people that live out in those regional areas.
And what's an El Nino?
Pretty sure it's the opposite, but
I think there's only a Nino.
Both of us are going to get it wrong.
I think Nina's made up. I think it's all Nino. Anyway, we'll have all the latest on that. Jeez, you would make a sensational weather girl.
Oh, I would absolutely not.
I've noticed on Channel 7 they rotate their weather people now. I reckon you should be in the rotation.
No.
Because it's a green screen and you point to it and you don't know what you're pointing to unless you're looking at the monitor. Did you know that?
Yeah.
Because actually not. Back in my day, the weather people on the news were real meteorologists, and we all grew up with a bloke called Alan Wilkie. Yeah. And he was a funny bloke, Alan Wilkie. He wasn't big on presentation, but you knew you could trust him because he was a qualified meteorologist.
Yeah.
And Alan Wilkie was on Channel 9 with Brian Henderson, and he also did weather on 2SM in the late 70s.
Damn.
Alan Wilkie. Miss him.
Quickly, give me a wrap-up on what's happening with Trump.
Trump is, I think, and we'll discuss this in more detail with David Littleproud, he really wants to shore up this MOU, which is a Memorandum of Understanding with Iran, but he's playing with other characters, and one of them is Benjamin Netanyahu, who's a bloke in charge of Israel. And so it's not just between the United States and Iran, it's also Israel and a number of the other UAE countries. So just when you think you've got all the mice in the hat, a mouse gets out and you've got to go chase it. And when that mouse is out, that one over there gets out.
Yeah.
So all I know is this for sure. Donald Trump and JD Vance want this sewn up, put to bed, the strait opened and everything back to normal before Trump's midterms in November.
What was the point of it then? What was the point,
I don't know, because he said he wanted to disarm Iran from nuclear weapons, but he's told us that he'd done that a year ago.
And isn't there like at least in one of the peace deals or whatever, there was a clause where the US would pay Iran like reparations for damage. So they've essentially just paid like, what was it, like $300 billion or something to have this war. For what? For what?
For what? I don't know, Kelsey. And what was the point in Venezuela? I think what happened was Trump thought if he got rid of the Ayatollah, a new regime would take over that would fold over and bow down to Trump's demands. Just remember, this regime in Iran have been hating the West and have been at war with someone for thousands of years, and they don't roll over. They're entrenched in their ideology. And
they have an army to protect their ideology.
And they're not going to give up. They're not going to roll over. And I think he bit off a lot more than he can chew. A little bit like a Johannesburg Trump steakhouse.
That was a great wrap up. That was great. Just quickly, one last thing on Trump.
And just like the ostrich, the top of the menu, he's got his head in the sand.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that was good. That was good. Just one last thing on Trump, Luke. I think it was last week we spoke about the reflecting pool and the algae bloom problem that they're having. Just a quick little update on that, Luke. Now the paint is peeling off the bottom of the reflecting pool. So
I'm at a loss.
Wanted your thoughts on this. So Argentina, and I always have to come with a World Cup story here, Luke.
Yeah.
Argentina is trying to block 13,000 parents from attending the World Cup. You might be asking why. It's because they have not paid their child support.
Okay, these are Argentinians.
Yes.
So the Argentine government is banning 13,000 of its own citizens from attending the World Cup. Why?
Because they haven't paid their child support.
They haven't paid their... that's brilliant.
I know.
Should we make that... Imagine if Australia, you couldn't go to Canada or the United States to watch the World Cup because you had a parking fine.
Oh, that would be a bit too much. But in Australia, I looked this up. We do have similar types of rules where if you are, well and truly behind on your child support payments, the government can put a essentially no-fly sticker on your passport that says you can't go anywhere. But in this case, the government of Argentina, they've supplied US authorities with a list of 13,000 parents requesting that they be prevented from entering the World Cup.
Wow, their visas revoked at the airport, sent back on the next plane.
Yeah, and just remember, soccer is one of the most popular, it is the most popular sport in Argentina. Argentina is a massive soccer country. I mean, you reap what you sow, I guess.
I guess you do. So, pay your child support, Argentina. And if you don't cry for me.
No. Now, Luke, just quick news.
You don't get that, do you?
No, I don't.
The musical Evita. Eva Perón's big song on the balcony. Don't cry for me, Argentina. Oh.
I don't know it. Quick news roundup. A second wave of South Australia's toxic algal bloom could be imminent. Scientists say, we spoke about that a lot at the end of last year. So another algal bloom could very well be on its way. And Beetlejuice, the musical's Australia run, is coming to an earlier close due to high running costs and poor ticket sales. So bad news for Beetlejuice fans.
Well, I delivered an editorial on that on our special Luke Bona Radio Go Facebook
page.
Yeah, did you see it?
Yeah.
Well, I think it's sad, but I don't know anything about Beetlejuice, the musical. It was a Broadway hit or a hitette, not the biggest hit on Broadway. I haven't heard any of the songs. I certainly wouldn't rush out to get tickets. I like the movie, the Michael Keaton movie. You look at some of the biggest hits on Australian stages. We like Australian hits. Priscilla, Queen of the Desert was a big one. I tell you what, Lion King is a perennial favourite. They bring that back year after year after year, and people can't get enough. Can't get enough of Lion King, and anything with Disney in it, especially if it's on ice, does very, very well. But, Beetlejuice has lost its juice.
Yeah. I feel bad for the people that work on these productions, right?
Me too.
Because if it closes early, then that's, lost income.
Well, it's lost income. You're right. All those people, all those stage hands, the lighting people, the sound people, the extras, everybody involved now has lost work. I think it went to Perth, but they're cancelling Sydney, Brisbane and Melbourne, and they're the big ones. Capitol Theatre in Sydney is Sydney's premiere. That's where the Lion King always plays. Down there opposite Haymarket, Beetlejuice has lost its juice. And if you want to hear more of what I have to say on that, you can go to our special Facebook Friends page, whatever it's called. Okay, listener mail. Cameron sent us a video. I haven't seen this. This is the first time we're all experiencing it. Ready, please, Mr. Music.
We're not going to play the video because there is a little bit of swearing in said video. However, Luke, let me just show you this photo, this just to set the mood.
Set the scene. It's a parrot looking at a phone. Scientists taught pet parrots to video call each other.
Yes. So Cameron
Really?
sent us a video,
Can we play it?
and
Play
again,
it.
no, it's not. It's not a video of these actual birds. It's a video of somebody talking about this story.
Oh, okay.
This actually happened back in 2023, but an influencer, Trixie Mattel, posted a video talking about this because it's pretty incredible. So they taught parrots to video call themselves, and obviously the parrots loved it, and it also improved their well-being. So essentially, the birds were taught to ring a bell.
Yeah.
Their owner would come over with an iPad or an iPhone or something.
Yeah.
The bird would use its tongue to select who it wanted to talk to.
No, it didn't.
And these parrots developed friendships. So, like, you would find that some of these birds would call a specific bird back all the time. They were also learnt different skills from each other. So birds that couldn't fly at the start of the experiment could fly by the end of it. And what they kind of came to the conclusion of was that, you know, they're sharing skills. They would show each other toys. And look, when you think about this, right, like birds are, you know, they fly in flocks, right?
No,
they're
birds
pretty,
of a feather flock together.
whatever. But birds themselves, they're social creatures, right?
If you get the shits, you'll ruffle their feathers. I wonder in a group, I wonder what the pecking order is. Go on.
In captivity, some birds can have behavioural problems because they don't have that kind of like social connection. The birds that made the most outgoing calls also received the most incoming calls. Isn't that the coolest thing ever?
I would have thought birds would prefer Twitter.
Ha, ha, ha.
I think it's unbelievable. I think it's fantastic.
10 out of 10?
10 out of 10. I want to see video of a bird talking to someone on the phone and making the call. I want to see that. Hey, listen, I wonder, do we have any listeners that have talking parrots? I wonder if they could get their parrot to leave us a message.
Yes.
And we will give away something. Oh, it's got to be, but it can't be someone impersonating a parrot. Do we want to see video? We want to see video of someone's parrot.
I think you would be able to tell if it was a human impersonating a bird.
Mate, I don't know. I wonder if someone could send us a video of their talking parrot and someone having a conversation with their parrot.
Just make it easy. If you have a parrot, leave us a voicemail from your parrot. We trust our audience to be truthful, Luke. We're putting the trust in the people's hands.
I don't trust them at all. They'll do anything for a coffee cup. You ask your granny and your poppy. Send us a voice message, 0291289311. I want a voice message from your parrot. Let's see what we get.
Now, Luke, we got this voicemail from Khoury.
Yeah.
Hey, just want to give a shout out. One, I spotted the Rod. He was heading northbound near Granite Creek rest area just north of Gingin. But I got a few rants. Parking bays at servos and that. I mean, truck stops and that. If you're in a body truck and you can see quite clearly it's painted B-double and caravans and buses and whatever else, or even a single semi, yes, we all need a break and whatnot. But if it's a B-double painted clearly on the concrete, try and keep them free for the B-doubles that actually come in and try and find a park, because it's hard enough getting a park, excuse the language, bad enough getting a park as it is at some of these locations, and yet you go throw her in there and there's a body truck or a prime mover or a caravan or something in there, and then you got to try and squeeze your way back out and then either wait or something like that. And courtesy and mateship out on the road, like, there is just none.
Both those points we've covered with Rod, but I tell you what, we'll save that audio, Kelsey, and we'll play it to Rod when we next talk to him. But how often does that come up? Bit of courtesy.
Oh, were you able to talk to Littleproud about Brett's message last week?
No.
Okay, we'll have to do that next time we've got Littleproud on then.
Promise next time we talk to David Littleproud, I will bring up the subject, the important subject of transparency when it comes to political donations. So that will definitely be on the top of the list next time we talk to David Littleproud.
Okay, got this voicemail from Jono. Now, he's talking about the shark situation here, and he's got a suggestion.
Hi, Kelsey. Hi, Luke. It's Jono again. On the article that we're talking about with the sharks, if we can't use them as a resource to eat, why don't we use them as a resource, putting them back in the ground to help the soil so we can use it still for something instead of wasting it?
Oh, maybe that's a question you should ask.
Daryl MacPhee.
No! Fish
Swiftgrow.
food. Swiftgrow. Can you make Swiftgrow out of shark poop?
Well, why? That is a great question for my very good friend Joe. Joe, who makes the best fertiliser, Swiftgrow from barramundi poo.
Exactly.
Can you make a fertiliser from shark poo?
Yeah. Well, after asking that.
He makes his fertiliser from barramundi because barramundi have a great tolerance towards infection, and sharks do too. In fact, they've done experiments and they can't give sharks cancer. So, Kelsey, that's a very good point. Let's round up the sharks, put them in captivity, and collect their poo. It's going to be a very brave...
Wait, do sharks... They have to.
All things shit, Kelsey. If you eat shit, right, and if you don't shit, you die. I'm sure they do.
Surely.
Shark poo fertiliser. I'm going to put it to Joe from Swiftgrow. I'm going to his daughter Montana's wedding, did you know, next month?
Yeah, I did know. That'll be nice.
I can't wait.
Ask him at the wedding. Great conversation starter.
I will.
Now, Luke, on the subject of sharks, I think it was last week, at the start of last week, we put up a poll asking should sharks be culled. We've got more votes now.
Okay.
It's split in the middle, 50-50%. 50 says yes, we should cull sharks, and 50% says no, we shouldn't cull sharks.
Yeah. The audience is divided depending on whether or not you've ever been attacked by a shark or had a relative attacked by a shark, I bet.
Oh, God. Now, Luke, we don't have a good sample size on this next poll yet. There's only been 5 votes, so don't get too happy yet.
Yeah.
But we asked who is more athletic, a basketballer like LeBron James.
Yeah, the goalkeeper from Vazonia, wherever
No,
he was.
his name is Vozinia.
Oh, Vazinia.
Yeah.
And
we asked who's more athletic, and
and the goalkeeper's 40. LeBron James is 41.
Yes, and I said, just so you know what the questions were, I said a basketballer, and then in brackets like LeBron James, and then a goalkeeper like Vazinia.
Yes.
Now, Luke, like I said, we don't have the full results in yet.
Yeah.
But
what's the overwhelming result?
80% of votes thus far have said a basketballer like LeBron James is more athletic.
Of course he is. Don't even bother waiting for more responses. That's only going to grow. Of course LeBron James is more athletic than a soccer goalkeeper, for Christ's sake.
I don't know. Maybe I need to watch more basketball. But look, that poll is going to be up for another week. So
hey, what about Australia getting smashed 2-0 by the USA? I was so hoping we'd win because of that that American...
Look, we deserve to lose that game, but let me just say this.
Why didn't we play? Everyone said, they showed some spirit in the second half. Well, why didn't they do it in the first half? Or did America nursing a 2-0 lead back off a little bit and just rest up?
But did you notice, though, the reffing in that game was absolutely... Look,
you're an expert
I think
in
it was
soccer
rigged.
Now, are you?
I think it was rigged. And also, one of the refs, I can't remember his name, he has actually been done for match fixing in the past before.
Jeez.
They're not going to not let the host country get at least into the knockouts.
All we had to do was put the ball in the back of the net, Kelsey, and we didn't do it. Anyway,
look, I'm saying that it was rigged. However, we did deserve to lose the game.
So we're not out of it.
No, not yet.
We've got to play Paraguay, which is this Friday. And that's the group stage because we're in Group D. And if we beat Paraguay, I think a draw might get us there. I'm not sure, but I think we've got to win against Paraguay and we may move on. So let's wait and see. But I was hoping to beat America. That would have been good.
I mean, the chances of us versing them again is actually quite small, but here's hoping.
Here's hoping. Coming up, we'll find out what exactly is the situation with Australia's fuel supply. Peter Khoury from the NRMA is next. School holidays approaching for a lot of Australians, and so many Australians depending on fuel supply, the cost of fuel, not to mention our truckies who are delivering our groceries, our fuel and everything else we need, depending on the price of diesel. It's kind of getting confusing to understand what the government was in fact going to do with the fuel excise cut. About a week ago, it wasn't going to be cut and that the fuel excise cut was going to end July 1, but now they're saying that they will extend it, but only kind of halfway. The excise, as we know, was first introduced in April. It was set to expire at the end of June. The Prime Minister has now confirmed the fuel excise cut would be carried into July amid a tenuous peace deal between the US and Iran, which includes the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. Now, we all thought that was a done deal. But that deal is now as precarious as it was 38 denials ago. Petrol and diesel prices will be 16 cents per litre cheaper compared to normal prices in July, and it's expected to save drivers about $11 a tank. Peter Khoury from the NRMA is all across this, joins me again. Thanks, Peter. Good to hear your voice, mate, and thank you for joining us on the Bonafide Podcast.
Thanks for having me.
We were confused a week ago because we were told by Chris Bowen that the fuel excise cut would end July 1. Then we were told, no, it will continue. Now we're told it will continue, but at half the cut. And I went onto the NRMA website a week ago, and as far as the NRMA was concerned, the cut was going to end July 1. So now they're going to extend it. Peter, can you please set the record straight? What's going on?
Yeah, so everything you just said was spot on. So they did say that they were not going to extend it, that it would be reintroduced, but they also had the little caveat that said that they can be flexible to what's happening in terms of global prices, and so they would make a judgment call closer to that July 1 deadline. And I guess that's what they've done this weekend, is that they've announced that they're going to reintroduce half of what they cut, which is 16 cents a litre when you include the GST. That is going to mean that you're paying 16 cents a litre more. Well, certainly that will get added to the wholesale prices, and in time that'll flow on to the Bowser price. So to give you an example of what that means, as we speak, the average price of unleaded across the country is $1.63. If this was the 1st of July, that price would invariably end up going up by 16 cents a litre. Diesel's currently $1.92, so that would also go up back over the $2 mark. So yes, they'll go up, which means they'll be higher than what they were before the war started, but certainly not at those record high prices we were paying in April.
So just for the truckies that listen into our segment with Rod Hannifey on Truckie Tuesday, what is this going to mean to the price of diesel and therefore, I guess, the price of all the goods that the trucks carry?
Yeah, well, I think there's two really important distinctions to make here. One is that there's an issue of supply and there's an issue of price. Supply continues. So we've got plenty of oil tankers in Australia. We've got more coming. The Australian government has been able to secure consistent supply throughout the crisis, and so there is going to be plenty of diesel in Australia. The price at the Bowser, that's a separate issue. It is going to go up once that 1st of July deadline hits by 16 cents a litre. And then in August, the remaining 16 cents will also apply unless they change their mind on that as well. Now, between now and the 1st of July, anything can happen in the Middle East, as we see on an hourly basis.
Oh, so I know. We had a done deal, and then the deal was off, and then it was. I know, and we've been told 38 times from Donald Trump that it was all done, and the Strait of Hormuz was open for business. Yay! But it's
correct.
So what's happening now? And by the way, by the time our listeners hear this, it could all be different again.
I definitely will. So, I mean, given that the negotiations are stalling and then back on again and back off again, and given that the Americans are saying the Strait's open and the Iranians are saying it's not, things could change by the time this interview ends. So, I mean, that's just the reality that we're facing. Thankfully, our regional benchmark prices in the Asian markets, they've really stabilised. And factoring in the chaos, I guess, is probably the clearest way to describe it. So you're not seeing the kind of wild fluctuations in our regional benchmark prices, which are tapas for unleaded and gas oil for diesel, that you're seeing in the US and European markets. So there's been steady falls with our benchmark prices. So tapas has fallen. It's down to around $84 a barrel. So it's fallen about 13% in the last week, and gas oil's down to about 112. So it's fallen 18%. So there's been steady falls in our regional benchmark prices. And that is factoring in all the chaos that's coming out of, Truth Social in the Middle East.
So do we have a sufficient supply of fuel in Australia right now? Is there any need to panic?
Yes, we have sufficient supply, and no, there's no need to panic.
What's a sufficient supply? How much have we got? How many days? How many weeks?
So the days of storage have actually increased since the war began. So we're into the 40-day region for unleaded and well over 30 for diesel. But what's also more important than how many days we've got is what's coming across the seas. And so we do know that I think there's about 51 tankers of fuel that are expected to arrive in Australia as well. So we've got enough fuel. We don't want people going out and panic buying like they did before. All they ended up doing was going out and buying a whole lot of diesel and unleaded at record high prices and storing it in their garages for no good reason. So please don't do that again, particularly since prices are falling and it's also very unsafe.
Okay, we have 40 days at least. Now, the IEA, the International Energy Agency, says we've got to have 90. Why didn't we ever have 90?
Yeah, we've never been even close to that. There's a few reasons. One is we don't refine most of our fuel here anymore. We used to have 8 refineries. We now have 2. So we used to import crude and refine it here in far greater numbers, or use our own crude where it was usable. So that's the first reason. The second is we haven't invested in storage capacity. So you have to build storage to hold fuel. And we need to do more of that. So a lot of our fuel is held in terminals or at the refineries. The mining industry, they have stockpiles of fuel that they reserve as well. I mean, if you look at the United States, for example, they have the largest stockpile of strategic reserve, and even although they've drawn down on it considerably during this conflict, and there are 2 locations where they've converted old mines into huge storage facilities in Colorado and I believe Kentucky. So they've invested in that sort of storage. A lot of the other countries have. We've announced that we're doing more now, and there was a fair bit of money committed to this in the federal budget. So improving refineries, improving storage. So we have to do a better job than what we've been doing. It took a global crisis, oil crisis, to make us realise that we can't keep ignoring this issue.
Okay, now, whenever there's school holidays, we've learnt over the years that a lot of the petrol companies whack the price up the Wednesday or the Thursday before the school holidays start. How can we be sure that won't happen again?
So we've become a lot better here in Australia at understanding price cycles and when prices should go up and when they shouldn't. And so we are seeing, well, first of all, there's no more price cycles. I think that's the first thing to point out, unless you're in Perth. Perth has it's reintroduced its 7-day cycle, but we're not seeing price cycles anywhere else in Australia. Prices have been steady, moving largely in line with wholesale prices and oil prices. We don't think prices will go up artificially over the school holiday period. It runs into July, so you are going to see prices go up when half of the excise gets reintroduced. But given that we're seeing prices falling globally, it all depends on what happens with global prices. That normally takes about 7 to 10 days to flow on here to Australia. But on the current trend, we should see these prices remaining relatively stable, given that the school holidays don't start in New South Wales for 2 weeks and in New South Wales, in Queensland and Victoria, I think next week. So short answer is no, they shouldn't go up. Long answer is depends on what's going to happen in the Middle East. Plus, we also have to factor in that 16 cents that's going to be added.
All right. So, Peter Khoury, we just take a deep breath, show a little patience, and just trust that Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu will see this thing through, and Iran.
Yeah, if you're going away on the holidays, shop around before you fill up. Get on the NRMA app. We've got the price of every servo in the country, so there's bargains to be found across the country. Please don't panic buy. There's plenty of fuel in the country. And look, at the end of the day, until there's a solution in the Middle East and the Strait reopens, this volatility remains, unfortunately, and we're exposed to it.
One last question. If the whole issue in the Middle East does get solved at some point and the Strait of Hormuz is opened again for international shipping, when they declare that they have a treaty, a truce, an understanding, how soon until that strait's open and the ships start flowing?
There's some structural issues on the ground that we just don't know yet, right? So they have to clear the Strait of mines. There's been structural damage to refineries and terminals because of the bombings, both in Iran and, the UAE nations. That needs to be fixed. How much damage has been done? What sort of refinery impact has it had? All of those things need to be considered. I imagine that they'd be able to fix them pretty quickly. They've gotten quite good at it. So all those issues need to be addressed before we get a proper sense of how long it will take for things to get back to normal. Experts are saying it will be months. There'll be an immediate sugar hit once those 1,000-odd tankers sitting in the Strait leave the Strait and start unloading their stockpile of fuel. A lot of countries that have drawn down into their strategic reserves are going to have to refill those strategic reserves. So you're going to see, their first priority will be to get fuel to their populations, to their citizens through service stations and through industry. But then, countries that, like the United States, for example, that have drawn down on their reserves, you would imagine that they would seek to restock, which means that demand's going to go up, which will put upward pressure on price. But on top of all of that is the global economy. So if the global economy continues to stutter along, that will put downward pressure.
Sorry, I said that was the last question. I lied, Peter. This is the last question. What's the difference between us stockpiling petrol, refined petrol, and diesel?
What's the difference?
Yeah. So we only have 2 refineries in Australia at the moment. Used to have 8. Where does our diesel come from, and where is it stockpiled?
So we import most of our refined fuels. So most of what comes into Australia now has been refined. Even the diesel. Yeah. It's been refined, almost all of it in Asian refineries. They're much bigger than the refineries that we have here. They've been something like a economy of scale of something like 3 to 1. So they can refine fuel 3 times faster and 3 times cheaper than we do it here. So it makes sense that the oil companies would bring it in refined rather than using the 2 refineries that we have here, although we've seen what sort of risk that carries when you leave yourself that exposed. So what we need to do is increase our refining capacity here in Australia and increase our storage capacity. But most of what we put in our cars is refined overseas.
Yeah, okay, well explained. Peter Khoury, good to talk to you, mate. Thank you so much. We'll talk soon.
Thanks for having me.
Peter Khoury, NRMA.
Stories and laughter that brighten my day. Got the bluesy rhythm, but it's swinging my way. Oh, I got the look on a blues, but they're the kind that chase.
Pauline Hanson made headlines. It was the first time she'd been invited to speak at the National Press Gallery in Canberra. There was a protest in the background that was organised, I understand, by Get Up, and a bloke that I knew pretty well back in the day when he worked at 2CC, David Shiraz, who is the partner of Brittany Higgins. He was escorted from the room, and we'll talk about that in just a second. But Pauline Hanson had a number of policies that she spoke very, very confidently on. And the press gallery, I guess they were limited to a question, then dismissed. There wasn't a lot of pushback. And I think a lot of the highbrow journalists were probably hoping, or indeed expecting, that Pauline Hanson would fall over, would lack any sort of real content to her thoughts, and would be exposed as possibly a fraud. She's not a polished speaker, never tried to be, but at least she's been consistent since 1996. She's been compared to Donald Trump. Pauline Hanson has been doing and saying the things that she does and believes in since 1996, and she's been pretty consistent. But as I say, there wasn't a lot of journalistic pushback. Now, Senator David Shoebridge from the Greens has been on our podcast a number of times, and it's great to get him on. And it's what we call a vision from the other side. And Senator, thank you so much. I can see in the background you're in an office. It's not Canberra, though. It's Sydney, isn't it?
This is my Sydney electorate office. It's here in Redfern, in my hometown of Sydney. So I try and spend as much time in out of Canberra as I possibly can, because this is the being out and about in Sydney, being out and about in New South Wales. I mean, that's the goal. Do you know what? It's another topic for another day. But I drive through Redfern every week to go to Channel 7 at Everleigh. Yep. And I go over the bridge past the railway station, and there on the corner is a big mural of Greg Inglis, the Indigenous South Sydney footballer. And you still get the vibe of Redfern. I haven't walked around the streets. I have, back in the day, spent time at the old Everleigh Street, which was just horrific. And so Redfern has changed, and yet I feel it hasn't. For those who don't know, it's inner Sydney, and it was known as I guess you could say, an Indigenous enclave. It had lots of problems back in the day.
But it also had a lot of pride. It also had a lot of indigenous.
It's an amazing place, Luke. And in fact, just looking out from my office just over here, there's this gorgeous mural that goes across the railway bridge just in front of the station, and it says, when I went to university here and I used to walk, I'd get the train down to Redfern and walk past. It used to say 40,000 years is a long, long time. 40,000 years still on my mind. Of course, now we know much more about the sort of deep history of First Nations peoples. It's the same mural, but it says 60,000 years is a long, long time. 60,000. And in fact, one of the reasons we're here is that proud First Nations culture here. This is the first part of urban Australia where First Nations peoples organised and got some land back and actually had land rights coming back into urban Australia. And First Nations community is still proud, still strong. And, you know, if there's, like in all parts, inner parts of our cities, there's this gentrification push, trying to push out working class people, push out First Nations peoples, push out that diversity. There's still a strong beating First Nations heart here in Redfern, and it's bloody nice.
Yeah, I did, as I told you, spend a bit of time in Redfern with either relatives or other Indigenous Australians talking about the problems that were within Everleigh Street and Redfern. And I wanted to bring back your reflection, Senator, on Pauline Hanson and a couple of key points in what she said in Canberra. And she started out by saying, "You will get no welcome to country from me today. We don't need to be welcomed to our own country." She said everybody from the Australians that died and fought for our country's democracy are as Australian as all of us. And she made a real point, and she, right from the get-go, there was to be no welcome to country. What did you make of that?
Oh, I think it's just like that's an ugly slap in the face to First Nations peoples. You know, I think one of the most amazing things about welcome to country from First Nations peoples is you think about their experience over the last 250 odd years, dispossession, violence, having their kids stolen, having their land stolen, trying to break up their culture, literally to try and do what Pauline Hanson now says, to have a monoculture, to take First Nations kids from their families, refuse to let them speak their language, refuse to let them speak their culture. Think of all of that violence against First Nations peoples. And then still, somehow, this remarkable culture, these extraordinarily generous people still are willing to welcome us onto their country. Like that is such an extraordinary gift that we have. It's a statement of sort of some kind of deep cultural power that I couldn't have. Like if people had done that to my culture, my family, my history, my country, I don't think I would have the cultural strength to welcome people onto my country, yet First Nations peoples do. And to slap it in the face like that, to talk down to it like Pauline Hanson does, goes to show she's never made an effort to try and understand, never tried to walk a minute in the shoes of First Nations peoples. And if she did, she would see it as an act of extreme generosity, because that's what it is.
She also later on in her speech, and I really wanted to ask you about this, she said Australia should not be a multicultural country, we are multiracial. And so the question, and I guess this is open to interpretation, and I will say this to you, Senator, we believe we'll have Senator Pauline Hanson on the podcast next week. And so I'll ask her. But so I'm trying to look through the interpretation. Yeah. What do you, Senator, consider to be Australian culture? What is Australian culture?
Well, Australian culture is this deep respect we have for each other, this amazing tolerance and acceptance of just how diverse we are, but also that we're gathered around a bunch of key values. And I always thought one of those was tolerance. Pauline Hanson doesn't agree with that. She doesn't think tolerance is one of our values. I reckon it is a fundamental Australian value. You know, kind of live and let live. If you want to be a pillock, you can be a pillock. That's okay. If you want to express your culture, you can express your culture. But we all unite around a sense of respecting other people's rights. The rights to express their own belief, their own religion, their own values, and your values can't prevent somebody expressing their values. I think that is fundamental. Add to that democracy and a sense of kind of stability that comes about through a rule of law that's based upon democracy. Like we all have a buy-in to the system. We should all have a part in the system. And you know, and one of the other things that I find amazing about this country, and one of the reasons, you know, that I think so many people connect to this country is we try not to let anybody fall totally through the cracks. We have Medicare that means regardless of where you are in the country, if you fall sick, someone's going to look out for you. We've got Social Security so that even though it's nowhere near enough, right, but no one's going to be left with nothing in this country. I mean, people are desperately struggling. And as the world becomes increasingly unfair, and Pauline Hanson has policies to make it even less fair, to take away workers' rights, to give more money to billionaires. As the world becomes less fair, ensuring we've got that kind of basic fair go in the system and keeping that in place, that's one of the core projects the Greens are fighting for in federal parliament.
Yeah, because when she says Australian culture, and I'll ask her, but I'll replay your question to her now when I talk to her next week. Senator David Shoebridge, what would you like to ask Pauline Hanson right now?
Well, I'm not here to press questions to Pauline Hanson. She can argue her own case. And I reckon, Luke, you should ask her questions. Does she stand by her statement that she made that Australia was being swamped by Asians? Does she stand by her push for a monoculture?
I will.
Because I'll tell you what, last night I was at dinner with my family, right?
Right.
Pauline Hanson had been out saying it's outrageous and un-Australian to have more than one language spoken, that we should have a monoculture and shouldn't have different languages spoken. I was around the dinner table with my family and there was smatterings of Cantonese intermixed with, this big family chats about this, that and the other, and little pockets of Cantonese being spoken. And it was full of life and love and fun. And the fact that we have a politician hating on what my experience was last night with my family, I just find that divisive, nasty, and something that I will absolutely fight against. And it's not just my experience. Millions of Australians go home and have this kind of lovely blend of English, other cultures, bringing that diversity and richness. And then we have this thing in Australia, the kind of magic in Australia is we bring it together, right? And we bring it together in this extraordinary, diverse Australia. The world is a complicated place. It's full of hundreds of different countries, thousands of different cultures, probably if you were to look at it. What an amazing gift we have in Australia with so many people who can navigate that world for us, help interpret that world for us. And I'll tell you one thing about multicultural Australia is they love what we have here in Australia. They love democracy, the sense of being safe, the sense of them being safe and being able to express themselves. And they are 100% wedded to this country. And when Pauline Hanson suggested because you speak a different language at home, or because you come from another place, or because you have a different religion, you're somehow less Australian than she is, and she seems to put herself as some sort of totemic Australian, I fundamentally reject that too.
Can I tell you a story? And I reckon you'll relate to this. Obviously, I am of Indigenous background, but I'm adopted. Now, Brian Bona, B-O-N-A, who adopted me, his background's Italian. And his grandfather, who came to Australia from Italy, absolutely refused to let Italian be spoken at home. Mm-hmm. So now we're talking about my great-grandfather, Dad's grandfather. And
so we're talking immediately post-war, Luke? Is that when we're talking, sort of in the late 40s, early 50s?
Correct.
Yep.
No, earlier, much earlier. My dad turned 18 in 1945.
Okay. So first part of the 20th century.
Correct.
Yep.
And Dad was always so bitterly, because my Dad's grandfather came to Australia and said, we're going to learn English, we're going to be part of Australia. Mm-hmm. And by the way, he brought over his own pasta making machine, but that was about it.
Yeah.
But Dad was always so upset that Italian, the language, wasn't taught at home, because to be bilingual is amazing. I lived next door to Germans. God, my mum's...
Well, look, imagine if you grew up and you spoke a First Nations language and you spoke Italian and you spoke English, and that had been part of your growing up, and you'd been proudly able to celebrate those different elements about you. That wouldn't make you lesser. That would just be this kind of massive cultural, personal kind of connection that you'd have. And Pauline Hanson thinks that would make you lesser. And I totally reject it.
I don't know how to interpret. Is she actually saying she doesn't want other languages spoken, or is she saying if you are radicalised in any way, you've got to accept our laws and the fact that we have a culture here and stop trying to fight us. Don't come out to Australia, to a wonderful country, and be like this the whole time. Is that what she's saying? I can't speak for her.
Well, I mean, she uses the term monoculture. She attacks multiculturalism. The core of multiculturalism is celebrating that kind of diversity, right? And celebrating the different language. She attacked people speaking different languages at home. She said that wasn't the Australia she wanted. Like, she did say these things. Maybe there are some people in her, spin team thinking, well, actually, this might play out badly in such a diverse country as Australia now. But that's what she said. And she has a history of saying these things, playing the race card, saying she's concerned about Australia being swamped by Asians. And now that Asians aren't the top of the hate list in the right-wing media, now she's turned it to Muslim Australians or people from Palestine. Like, she has been consistent. She's been consistent in punching down on whoever the right-wing in politics says is the target of the day. That's her consistency, if you ask me.
Do you think she's racist?
Yeah, I think there's no question about it. You can't come out and say the hateful. You can't come out and make those attacks against Asian Australians. You can't come out and make those attacks against people from Palestine. You can't come out and make those repeated attacks without having an element of that in her politics. And I don't think, I just think it's sort of unchallengeable. Look at her history. And I think that's unchallengeable. But one thing we haven't discussed, Luke, is why is she getting traction, right?
Yeah, that was my next question.
I think that is a fundamental question to ask. And it's the comprehensive failure of Labor and before them the Coalition to actually build that kind of fair Australia, put in place the job opportunities for young Australians to have cracking careers that will give them a stable and positive job. It's their failure to make housing affordable in this country. It's their failure to have a kind of vision for Australia that brings us all together. Because one of the things in politics should be, what are we doing this for? Like, what are we all coming together for as a country? I reckon we're coming together to build great jobs for our young people, to protect some of the amazing natural wonders in this country, to make things fairer, to build a system so if you get sick, you get looked after. But instead we have this kind of discussion about how we're going to farm that all off to private corporations. We're going to let big US tech platforms come and take our country. We're going to go to war with Donald Trump. People want politics to be inspiring. I'd like our federal government. I spoke to you before about projects to get apprentices respect and a job. Imagine instead of spending $300 billion on nuclear submarines or $400 billion on nuclear submarines, imagine if this federal government said, we're going to spend $400 billion building this amazing light rail system, fast rail, between Melbourne, Sydney and Brisbane. And we're going to spend another chunk of it investing in not building nuclear submarines in Adelaide, but building a massive national construction project there. So we build all of the rail projects, all of our rail carriages and engines and light rails and fast rails. So that's all going to be pumped out of Adelaide. And we want our kids to be having a job connecting Australia rather than building nuclear submarines. Like, there's so much we could do to give hope. And we have this shit politics, and the shit politics of Labor and the Coalition has created the space for Pauline Hanson.
Okay, let's talk about something else she mentioned, and it was actually a key point. She wants to defund the ABC. The ABC receives about $1.2 billion a year from the Australian taxpayer. She says it's way overfunded and people should subscribe if they want to watch the ABC. What do you make of that?
She wants to privatise the ABC. That's basically what she wants to do. She wants to privatise the ABC. And I say nuts to that. Like, I'll tell you the places where the ABC is absolutely life-saving. It's out in regional and rural Australia, right? That is where there's no small papers. Those small papers have all basically been squashed. There's minimal independent media out in those. And credit to those who are still struggling and trying to do it. And so what she wants to do is take this lifeline, this communications connections lifeline, overwhelmingly from regional and rural Australia, and she pretends they're the people she goes into bat for. Now, I think the ABC is far from perfect. And I'll tell you, I don't think it's got a left-wing bias. I think it's increasingly got a right-wing bias, but the fact we can have a debate about it.
Oh, we can debate that.
We can have a debate about it, and we can have an argument about it. That's part of what politics and democracy is. But the fact she wants to privatise the ABC, nuts to that. That's a disastrous.
Just on public broadcasting, is SBS still relevant?
Yeah, 100%. We have this incredibly diverse country, right? And one of our strengths is we know what the hell is going on in the rest of the world. I mean, you have to know what's going on in the rest of the world in 2026. You can't just pretend it's not there and everyone's sitting down and eating white bread and margarine, right? You have to know what's going on in the rest of the world so we can have national policies that respond to the dynamism, some of the conflicts, some of the mess and the opportunities in the rest of the world. We so need that. We need it more than ever. SBS helps us tell some of those stories. Helps us get an understanding about how we relate to the rest of the world and what the hell is going on there. It's actually, I think, critical to our economic future, our cultural future, and our national security. And the fact that Pauline Hanson can't see how we need to know more about the rest of the world, not less. I mean, she may want to just sit in a room, turn off the ABC, turn off the SBS and only listen to Rupert Murdoch. I personally think that would be pretty bloody dangerous.
I know you're going to go. I've got to ask you this. The yellow protest sign that came down during her appearance at the National Press Club. I
didn't do it, Luke, if that's what you're asking.
But obviously there's been a massive security breach. Do you think there needs to be an inquiry? Of all the things to send the AFP off, whether or not who put a banner down at a political thing, I mean, what a waste of time for the AFP. I want them actually to be fighting crime, right? You know, I'd like them to be looking at organised transnational crime. I'd like the AFP to be doing that, not working out who the bloody hell put a banner down. And like, if you can't survive someone doing a stunt against you in politics, like, you know, you're in the wrong game, right? Whether it's smart or not, I don't know, it was a stunt. And you're politicians, right? A cunning stunt, can I say that?
Yeah, you just don't say it quickly. Like, you know, whether it's smart or dumb, I'm not going to judge that, but like in politics.
It's politics.
It's a kind of contact sport sometimes in that regard.
It
you know,
is.
and you just got to roll with it. And, other politicians would have just said, well, what the bloody hell, and would have made fun about it and would have pointed out and rolled with it and made it work for them.
Senator, how about next time we talk about the future of nuclear power in Australia, the pros and cons? Can we do that?
Yeah, happy to do that, as long as we can also talk about something that works, which is renewables.
We'll talk. We'll talk again soon. I know you're going to go. Thank you so much.
No worries. Good speaking. Bye.
Senator David Shoebridge.
So be safe, please melt around my 42 wheels. If you came too close, they always kills. Just a dirty truckie putting food on my table. Got a fat kid who is lazy and an asshole.
Not just all of Australia, but a lot of the world is now talking about shark attacks and water safety involving sharks. As we now know, a mother mauled by a great white shark at one of Sydney's most popular beaches, Coogee Beaches, gathered national headlines. This poor woman, a local, a teacher, had her right arm severed. In fact, it had to be taken off and was fighting for her life for quite a few days. She was rescued from the water by what must have been a distressful time for all involved. And once again, the subject, and even ex-Prime Minister Tony Abbott has entered into this, who has spent a lot of his life as a surf lifesaver at Manly and Queenscliff and Sydney's northern beaches, has said, we've got to start culling sharks. There are too many sharks. Since they've been protected, their numbers have overtaken us and we deserve safety in the water. So are there too many sharks? Why do we see so many shark attacks now happening? And it has been predominantly bull sharks. This was a great white, only 3 metres offshore, and this poor woman was actually swimming between the flags, and not at dusk, not at dawn, not after a big storm. They're all the warnings that we've been given. There she was in broad daylight between the flags, only 3 metres from the shore. You'd think you'd be safe. You'd hope you'd be safe. So what's the problem? And what's the answer? Dr. Daryl MacPhee is an internationally acclaimed expert on sharks. He's with Bond University. And we're very lucky to have him on the Bonafide Podcast. Doctor, welcome aboard.
Thank you. Well, thank you for having me.
Well, I hope my introduction kind of paints the picture, because not only are we seeing a proliferation of shark attacks in Australian waters, but now the debate has always been, do we cull sharks? Do we put up shark nets? Do we spend money in developing anti-shark devices that you can put on your leg or your arm that transmit some sort of a signal that the sharks hate, a deterrent? Or do we just start killing them? Because, as some experts are saying, not you, but some experts are saying, we have now way too many sharks for our population since they had become a protected species. So let's talk about Coogee, but it's more than Coogee. It's about shark attacks all around Australia in very shallow water. Where do you see the problem first? How do you want to address this?
Look, there has been an increase in shark bites, including fatal shark bites. Between 2000 and 2019, the average number of fatal bites per year was 1.65. Between 2020 and 2025, that's risen to 4. There's already been 4 this year. So always as a scientist, the first stop-off point is to ask yourself, is there a problem? So I've asked myself, is there a problem? The numbers are clearly consistent with what people are feeling out in the beach-going community. There has been an increase in shark bites, particularly in Western Australia and particularly in New South Wales.
There's a joke that I made the other day, and it's unrealistic, and it is, how do you successfully avoid ever being bitten by a shark? And the answer is stay dry. But we are girt by sea and we are attracted to the ocean. We are attracted to water activities and, we should be able to feel safe in the water. And people will say, well, hang on, we're entering the shark's domain. They haven't got legs like crocodiles that can come up onto the land. The ocean is where they live. It's where they hunt. It's where they survive and have been doing for millions of years. We're the problem, not the sharks. How do you address that argument?
Look, we are a beach-going country. The ocean is important in our culture. Personally, I can't stand being anywhere more than about 10 kilometres away from the coast, like a lot of people.
Being a shark expert, that's probably a good thing.
Probably is a good thing, but I was a fisherman long before I was a shark expert. That's how I fed myself as a youth and how I paid my way through university working on fishing boats. The coast is in my blood. The argument that we're entering the shark's domain, you hear it a lot if you scroll through social media after a bite. That's always the comments. It's a little bit insensitive. I don't think it's helpful to debate because we need to continue to be using our coastal waters for swimming, for surfing, for fishing. So sort of a flippant throwaway line, it's their domain, it's not particularly helpful for the debate and can be disrespectful to the victims.
Isn't it funny you say you were a fisherman? And when I was growing up, Dr. Daryl, if you ordered fish and chips from your local fish and chip shop, your generic fish was flake, battered flake, which was shark. We lived on it. We ate it. Then the experts came along and said, you got to be careful. The bigger the fish, the more mercury. And it's kind of put a scare into flake. But we did eat it. Has that dropped off? Are there more sharks now? And is that why we're seeing a proliferation of shark attacks?
The flake that we ate was a species of sharks called gummy sharks in temperate waters, and school sharks, so 2 very small sharks. So they're always the premium species of shark. It was then augmented by various smaller tropical species of shark, mostly black-tip whalers. I'm a supporter of sustainable shark fisheries. I've done work trying to help out aged care, food services at aged care with providing some seafood options. People in aged care often like to eat what they've and experience what they experienced as a youth, and eating shark was one of those things. But we never ate the big species. We never ate white sharks. We never ate tiger sharks. We never ate big bull shark.
Thank you for explaining that. So what is the answer? And why are we seeing these shark attacks in such shallow water?
There have always been shark attacks, unprovoked shark bites in shallow water. It's unusual. And obviously focusing on the Coogee incident and why it really has rocked Sydney's beach-going community to the core and why it's resonated through Australia is that extremely shallow water, a bright sunny day around lunchtime and swimming between the flags. We're all aware that swimming between the flags can reduce the risk of a whole lot of things. It's a reminder, though, that the risk is never zero.
So once again, I'm asking, what's the problem and how do we solve it?
There's no one solution. Drone technology has proven to be valuable in terms of spotting sharks, relaying that information back to the beach. Sadly, there was no drones being flown at Coogee when that bite occurred.
But isn't that funny that you should say that? That's right, because it's a drone-free area because of CASA and because Coogee is under the flight path and they don't want drones flying up into the engines of 747s or whatever. But isn't it interesting that red tape was immediately cut and the drones were back the next day?
It was, yes. So air safety, which is critical. When we're talking about flying drones for shark safety, we're not talking about a dozen teenagers flying things left, right and centre. It's a coordinated program. Air safety and water safety can be balanced appropriately. So we've got drones. We have smart drumlines which can catch sharks, which are then acoustically tagged and relocated offshore and then monitored through listening stations.
What's a drumline?
Well, a smart drumline. So a standard drumline is a hook and a chain and a float in crude terms, which is used to catch sharks. They can catch other animals and there can be mortality of those sharks. The smart drumlines, which were invented out of Reunion, which is a tiny little speck in the Indian Ocean, which had a significant shark problem, where the initial policy response was to stop people going in the water, which is because it's going to be difficult when you're an isolated island relying on tourism, relying on ocean tourism. So a smart drumline alerts somebody back on shore, a contractor, that an animal has been caught, and they go out there, they remove the animal and they take it offshore.
So it kills the animal?
No, the animal lives.
Right.
The animal is tagged, and then the animal can be tracked through the listing stations that are along all of our beaches.
Okay, so it's a big long line with a hook and bait on it. The shark takes the bait, it makes a signal, it's then checked out, tagged, and the animal survives, but it's caught. But it won't catch all of them. And that's one of the arguments against the netting. Now, beaches, I'm from Narrabeen, so I've been brought up in a surf beach culture. For tourism, if a tourist knows Manly Beach or Bondi Beach or Coogee or if they know that the beaches have shark nets, it puts a sense of confidence in the tourism. People will come, have their holidays, spend money in the local community because they feel safer if there's a shark net. But I've read that shark nets aren't necessarily 100% foolproof.
No method is going to be 100% foolproof. You are right in terms of that beachgoer confidence. Following what happened in January in Sydney and then what's happened at Coogee, part of shark bite mitigation is going to be an attempt to try and restore that confidence back to the beach-going community. But shark nets are never 100% effective. No method is 100% effective.
No method is, of course not. Why are the sharks coming in so close? Is it because the species that they hunt for food are coming in closer? Has that got anything to do with warmer currents or colder currents and climate change? Why are they coming in so close?
Firstly, we've got better at spotting them and locating them through drones, through tagging. But what we also have is we have an increase in their coastal food resources. So we know humpback whales are going up in abundance and are recovered. So no one debates that.
Explain that. So the sharks are hunting the humpbacks?
They'll often follow them and look for sick animals.
Or newborns that are vulnerable?
Yeah, white sharks are opportunistic feeders. We've also protected seals and sea lions, which is not as big an issue for New South Wales as it is for South Australia. And then we have lots of coastal fish, including Australian salmon, which have rebounded. So once upon a time, Australian salmon were commercially captured in very large volumes and canned. That became no longer economically viable. So now those Australian salmon populations have rebounded from those lows, and you can see them along most of the New South Wales coast most days this time of year moving up the coast. And they're one of the favoured fish species for white sharks to eat.
I see. So their food has increased, therefore the sharks are hunting them, and their food source, we'll just use salmon for example, they swim pretty close to the shore, do they?
Absolutely, yeah. They hunt the coast the whole way along.
Okay, well that kind of explains it. What about shark radio deterrent inventions? And you hear them on the market. I've tried to research this as much as I can for you, Doctor, and the science is out on whether or not they actually work. If there was one that actually transmitted a signal that a shark hated and deterred the shark, it'd sell like hotcakes, or it would sell like close swimming salmon. But the science, as far as I can see, is not really sold on any one device yet. Is that pretty right?
Absolutely. Many of the devices have not been independently tested. So one that is independently tested was the Ocean Guardian Shark Shield, which is an electric deterrent.
Right.
Couldn't reduce the risk of a bite to zero, but did substantially reduce the risk and have been tested a number of times. Unfortunately, that's not commercially available at the moment, but the new company that now owns that technology will no doubt make it commercially available again. The challenge is there's a lot of cheaper approaches that are either not tested, or there's no reason to believe that actually work, or they may actually increase a risk. So there's lots of what I call science by YouTube. So a company will get on there, show some photos of a shark doing something or not doing something. You don't know how much footage has been taken to get the footage that they want. Or you have claims that there's been independent testing, but when you actually look, it's a related company to the company that's marketing the device that is doing the testing. So it's a little bit like buying a life jacket or a seatbelt or using a seatbelt in the car that hasn't been independently tested. That old mate down the road has just put together and said that it works.
Yeah. So they haven't got a model that they can actually say, here are the specs, here's the science, here's the proof, buy this product with confidence.
That's correct. And some go even further where they have been tested and haven't been found to be effective, and they always make sure they admit that in their marketing spiel.
It kind of reminds me of the Peter Brock polarizer. And Peter Brock was 100% that this polarizer with crystals and magnets and things put in one of his SS Commodores made the car go better. And Holden said, no, we can't prove it, and therefore we can't make that guarantee, and therefore we can't charge extra for it. Is it kind of like that?
It is, and that's a great Australian analogy. I think people of a certain vintage always remember that energy polarizer. And obviously Peter Brock is an Australian legend, but the energy polarizer may not have been legendary in terms of improving car performance.
It was the beginning of his downfall and the end of his relationship with Holden. But I only use that as an analogy. Brocky, the Peter Perfect 9 times winner of Bathurst, was 120% sure it worked, but he couldn't prove it. And so, therefore, you can't market it. You can't make promises.
Absolutely. And that is the perfect analogy.
So what's the answer, Doctor?
The answer is we need those effective deterrents back on the market. Not everybody's going to be using a shark deterrent. We need to improve the drones, and as drone technology develops, so there's new drones that are going to be commercially available that are much more effective in terms of the sea conditions and the flight times that they can undertake. So that's positive. We will have tagged more and more sharks and more listing stations, so we'll get a much better idea of movements into the coastal zone. There is a trap, though, with that sort of information in that we need to be a bit more nuanced when we're closing beaches in terms of what the actual risk is. I know in January, after those terrible incidents, beaches around Sydney were being closed left, right and centre for sightings of extremely small sharks, which actually pose no risk.
So do you think in the long term we need to transition away from lethal means of getting rid of sharks? I'm talking about culling, and more drones, more protection, better science, so that we feel safe in the water, so that we are safe in the water.
I think there needs to be a transition away from lethal methods.
So culling is not the answer.
Culling isn't the answer. So we've had Tony Abbott come out and obviously advocate for rebuilding, revitalising the commercial shark fishery, and complaining because white sharks are protected. He was in the government that protected them. It was the Howard government that protected the white shark. We'd never had shark fisheries for those large species. They were never in our fish and chips. Sydney Fish Market won't want to touch them with a 40-foot pole. So it's just not economically viable to catch them. Today, though, commercial fishermen in New South Wales can catch bull sharks. They've always been able to. Those that are caught it and marketed, generally smaller ones. And likewise, recreational fishers can today catch bull sharks. That's sort of missed in some of the rhetoric. New South Wales does have shark fisheries.
That is something that fascinates me, because when I was young, we all saw the movie Jaws, and so we all became terrified of great whites. The bull shark thing is kind of new to me. And I've heard experts say that they're incredibly aggressive, territorial, can live in bracken water, fresh water and salt water. They will go up canals and attack. And we've become suddenly very aware, maybe not as educated about them as you would like us to be, but we suddenly are now talking about bull sharks. Tell me about bull sharks.
You're right. Sort of a re-awareness of bull sharks, because in the early days of the European colony in Sydney, Brisbane, and then further north in Queensland around Townsville, it was bull sharks that were the sharks biting people in Sydney Harbour, Brisbane River, Ross River of Townsville. They can go right up rivers into fresh water. There was some that was trapped in a golf course for many, many years in urban Brisbane. So golf course had its own population of bull sharks in its water hazards. They are a large shark. They are unusual in that being able to use fresh water. So in the absence of dams, they can go and spend time in fresh water. The females migrate into upstream to drop their pups. And the first thing the pups do is try and go upstream and go into shallow water as fast as possible, because the mother shark will eat those babies.
Wow. Because I remember, and in fact, you won't believe this, Doc, but many years ago when I think I was on 2GB, and we were talking about, it was the anniversary of the death of Marcia Hathaway, who was an actress, and she got killed. She was fatally mauled by a shark in Sugarloaf Bay in Middle Harbour, and she was only up to her thighs in water. And I spoke to the son whose father had a fishing boat, and they witnessed it. And this man rang me and said, I was there when Marcia Hathaway was taken. It was an incredible phone call. But experts believe it was a bull shark.
Yeah, any serious bite that's in an inshore area, Sydney Harbour, Hawkesbury River is almost certainly going to be a bull shark.
Well, what's the lesson?
The lesson is that there's no simple fix. There's no one thing that governments can or can't do. There's no win-win for governments. Governments are always looking for win-win solutions.
They're after votes.
There's no thing that governments can do to fix the issue. Governments always need to be careful about rhetorical overreach and over-promising. Recently, I saw the WA Premier come out and say that WA have the nation's best shark mitigation methods. But WA is the state that actually has the continuing biggest increase in shark bites. Politicians need to be careful about that rhetorical overreach because it can come back to haunt them, because we are dealing with people's lives. So we're not dealing with a policy issue that's of interest to a handful of people. We're dealing with an issue where people lose lives and leave behind grieving families and friends.
All right. Well, it's something to think about. We've got to do as much research as we can. And on a previous episode of the Bonafide podcast, I spoke to Queensland politician Bob Catter about the culling of crocodiles. And he says, cull them. There's too many and people need to be safe. Can you make a comparison between the two debates?
You can't, no, because crocodiles have a very limited distribution. So you know how many crocodiles are in a river. White sharks range all around Australia and then cross over to New Zealand. So you've got this mobile population of large, in absolute terms, relatively rare. Mm-hmm. And then bull sharks range right up into Cape Yorks from Sydney. So you're not dealing with just pockets of animals. You're dealing with the practicalities of a cull. Even if there was a policy imperative to do it, will probably beat any attempt.
Wow. Well, we are drawn to the water. As I said, we're girt by it. And it's part of the Australian lifestyle and culture to enjoy the ocean and enjoy the beach. We don't want tourists not coming here because they're scared stiff about being eaten by a shark. But most importantly, we don't want people being attacked by sharks. So there's a lot of discussion. You've been great, and I thank you. So I'm going to make you a bit jealous. Can I drop a name?
Yes.
Okay, are you ready for this?
Yep.
And you can't make this shit up. Many, many years ago, when I was on the radio on 2BS in Bathurst, the Bathurst show was on, and they have exhibitors come in left, right and centre. And anyway, as a promotion, they wanted me to do a half-hour radio program, an outside broadcast, if you will, from the bottom of the Bathurst municipal pool, the local public pool, wearing a face mask that was attached to a mixing desk. The mask had a microphone in it, and I could hear the station back through I'm sitting on the bottom of the Bathurst Public Olympic Pool. Guess who taught me how to use it, and guess whose mask it was?
Who?
Valerie Taylor. I am not joking. I wore Valerie Taylor's radio mask sitting on the bottom of the Bathurst Olympic Pool during, I think, the 1987 or 86 Bathurst show. And I did a half-hour broadcast reading live commercials using Valerie Taylor's radio mic mask. I'm not joking.
All you needed was Peter Brock's energy polarizer.
And I would have been right.
That's right.
I would have been right. Hey, listen, what an absolute pleasure to talk to you, sir. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Time to talk to our man on the inside, and he really is on the inside. He's in Canberra today, and he's not his electoral office, his Canberra office, our man David Littleproud, and we get to see you today. So good to have you on camera. You're looking very sharp.
Yeah.
When do you get school holidays?
Well, mate, we got 2 weeks and then we're away for July. So we always have July away from Canberra. So we've got 2 weeks and then basically away for 5, and then we're back pretty heavy until November, end of November.
You know, the Teachers Federation, the Teachers Union, and a couple of other groups are pushing to have shorter terms and more school holidays for public school kids in Australia. Boy, oh boy, tell that to the people paying for childcare.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, anyway, I think the more you pay for tuition these days, the more holidays the kids seem to get. My kids go to a private school in Warwick, and they're off a week earlier than the rest of the state guys in Queensland. So, the more you pay, the less they get taught, unfortunately. But, I think we just got to simplify the curriculum, make it easier for teachers rather than clouding with ideology. Just let them give them the basics and get out of their lives as quickly as possible.
Well, one of the this wasn't on our list of topics, but one of the arguments was, the Teachers Federation says that the kids will be more rested, more refreshed, and more able to learn.
Yeah, look, I don't think you and I turned out too bad by having a full term, mate. I think the reality is this is a good way to it's not just childcare. It's about actually their engagement with other kids in the playgrounds, how they grow and structure as human beings, not just about sending them home and resting. I think life's hard. You've got to actually build a work ethic into the people from the start, and school's a way to do that. And I think if we get back to a simplified curriculum, just get back to reading, writing, arithmetic, a bit of geography, even about how interest works and how your banks work, so that you have some life skills, some proper life skills. That takes a full term to do it. We should. So my dad was a school teacher, primary school teacher in the state system. And I remember going to the last week.
Did he teach you?
No. He was in politics before. He was a teacher, then he was in state politics. But I remember going to the last week of the year. We'd always be allowed to go into the classroom with Dad. It was the old days when he had the cane in the corner.
Yeah.
And if the classroom played up, he was the president of the cricket club. He used to take them over to the rec grounds and give them a bucket each, and they'd have to pull bindies out of the cricket field, just as penalties for doing the wrong thing. But they all loved it. You'd always used to see people who Dad taught and said he was tough, but he was a good teacher. So he loved teaching before he got into politics.
Yes. See, that's real discipline if you're on bindi duty.
Yeah.
And of course, if you go to King's School or Riverwood, you have to pick up the horse poo from the polo field. So it's a different thing.
Yeah, different. So Chinchilla's a little bit different to the leafy suburbs of Sydney.
It is indeed. Hey, listen, there's a few national issues we've got to talk about. I'm dying to know your thoughts on all of this. God, I can't keep up with the government's budget, and they keep chopping and changing now. They've got feedback and they're changing things. But I do want to talk about this major fuel decision because we've got school holidays coming up, I think, nearly everywhere. And the price of petrol always seems to go up just before school holidays. But the Albanese government has now confirmed that the fuel excise cut is going to be extended for another month. Good thing or a bad thing? There's no. I tell you this: there's no way they'd be doing this if they were doing better in the polls.
No, but they should be doing it, in my view. And,
Do you?
And they've only done it by half, so they've halved the excise relief that's going to be provided. They're doing it for a month. You've got to understand. The Strait of Hormuz actually closed again last night. So the peace hasn't been settled. Supply chains have not returned to normal. And even when they return to normal, we're at the bottom of that supply chain. So it's going to take time for that fuel to wash through and get to Australia. So our prices will be higher for longer than the rest of the world. Even though you're seeing oil prices come down globally, it takes time for that to be processed and come through the Australian supply chain. So you're going to see another couple of months of that, even when the straits open up. And what we're seeing is, I think you'll see that particularly if this peace agreement, which is very fragile, and it falls over, we could be back to square one. And that's a frightening aspect to this. And I think, if nothing else, the government should have kept it where it is, but particularly for the transport industry. This was an opportunity because what they do worry about is it being inflationary. If it's money gets flowing, if you're not paying for your fuel as much as what you were, and then you're spending that in the economy, it can be inflationary. But you give it to the transport sector. The transport sector moves the economy. If you keep that pressure off them with the road user charge, it's not as inflationary because they're getting pummeled from both sides, the transport industry. They're getting pummeled by their suppliers, and they're getting pummeled by those that they're distributing to put pressure on them. They're the ones in the middle that are feeling the squeeze. And if you look at the number of businesses that are going into administration, the transport industry is exponentially represented there above most others because they're copping it in the neck in their costs. And this would be a way to protect them, because if we lose our transport industry, we lose our economy. We talk about energy being the economy. Make no mistake, in a country as big as Australia, if you don't have a transport sector, you don't have an economy either. You won't have stuff turn up in the shelves of your supermarket as a starting point. But when you go through the rest of the economy, what helps get it all there, it's the transport industry. It's just as important as the energy industry. And so this is where some sensible relief there. They should have kept it at full strength, at least for the transport industry, and kept it going to give them some hope and to give them some breathing space. And it wouldn't have the inflationary impacts, as much as inflationary impacts, as what it is if you're just giving it at a household level. So I'm a big believer that the transport sector needs that relief in totality, not cut back in half. And, I think that's, but the reality is I don't think we're out of the woods yet in the Straits of Hormuz. I think the reality is Israel's going to continue to play up, and there seems to be a fractioning between Trump and Netanyahu. So I think there's a real challenge there that we may not see the end of this conflict anytime soon.
Well, the thing is, it's not just the United States and Iran. It is, he mentioned Netanyahu, it is also Israel involved. And so just when you think you've got all the mice in the hat, a mouse jumps out.
Yeah. And I think this is the challenge. It's going to be that these groups in the Middle East and even Iran, they've been throwing bombs and everything else for over 1,000 years. They've been fighting and they've evolved into bombs. The reality is they're going to keep fighting. What we need to do is find a way to get some stability in the Middle East. And Netanyahu is looking for an opportunity to clean up as much. He's done a fairly severe job on Hamas. Now he sees Hezbollah as the next frontier if he can clean them up. And you look at it from the Israeli perspective, we can never forget the 7th of October 2023. He had over 1,500 Israelis slaughtered by a terrorist organisation on his sovereign soil. Now, if that happened in Australia, you'd expect the Australian government to go and hunt down anyone that may perpetrate hate against our country. But at some point, there has to be some common sense prevail. I think Trump was probably sold the idea that if he went and cleaned up the Ayatollah, that within a couple of weeks they'd have regime change in Iran. It hasn't happened because these guys are fighting in their veins. They have hate in their veins for over 1,000 years. And they were going to make sure anyone that wanted to rise up against the regime in Iran was going to get dealt with pretty quickly. So this is the challenge that Trump, I think, was sold a pup. He's gone in, he's unleashed Israel. Israel's seen an opportunity while Trump was there to do as much as they possibly could to clean up Hamas and to clean up Hezbollah and Iran while they're on the job.
And before the midterms, because if Trump gets hammered at the midterms, he's a toothless tiger, and he won't be able to support Israel like he is at the moment. That's my theory.
No, you're spot on. But this is the problem. Netanyahu also has elections, I think, in October, I heard recently. So he's got elections coming forward, but the war isn't as unpopular in Israel as what it is in the United States. So Trump's being cornered, and I think he thought he could have a quick win, get a political win in a couple of weeks, change regimes, and he'll be touting that at the midterms. But unfortunately, I think it's turned on him, and I think the midterms are going to get ugly for him, and he's going to lose that control of the Congress and potentially the Senate, which makes him a lame duck president for the following 2 years.
Yeah. David, I'm hopefully talking to Pauline Hanson very, very soon again on our podcast, and you don't answer for Pauline Hanson, but I just wanted to ask you your thoughts on the protest that was staged during her address at the National Press Club, the Get Up protest. How did they do that? How did they organise that? And do you think there needs to be further investigation?
Well, there should be. It's disgraceful. I've got to say, I have no issues with people protesting. That's all right. But when you go to the National Press Club, and I've been there and spoken 2 or 3 times, for the infrastructure they put in place, for that banner to be folded down, someone was part on the inside of the press club to be able to facilitate that. The press club should be a sanctuary where those that come and put themselves up for the scrutiny of the Fourth Estate should do that in the knowledge that it's going to be a level playing field. We're going to have it out on the floor, and there's not going to be any stunts. It's going to be debated on intellect and on your views, not on a banner being electronically unfolded behind you. That, I think, is an indictment on the press club, on the Fourth Estate. They've let themselves be suckered into this. It's appalling. They wonder why some of the mainstream media gets upset about, well, everyone's looking at social media now rather than us. Well, these are the sort of things you've got to understand. You have a responsibility and a standard you've got to uphold. And when you go to your house, that is the Free Press's house, the National Press Club. That is their sanctuary, their bastion that represents them. And if they've let that be compromised, then they've let their standards, they've let their profession be compromised. So I don't care whether it's Pauline Hanson or anyone else. The press club has a lot to answer for, and I sadly think they've diminished the standard, and I think the standard is still high of the Fourth Estate, even though I don't always agree with them. I think they are of a higher standard than most other countries, but they've let themselves be diminished by this act by a few. And I'm not saying everybody was in on it. So I think we've got to be careful. There was a few that were in it, but they have done damage to the profession and to the national press.
There's something else Pauline said, and Kelsey and I were debating this the other day, and I wanted to ask your opinion. Pauline Hanson has come out with a lot of policies, and I'll talk to her about them down the track. But she did say something that had me scratching my head, and I guess it's up for interpretation, and I'm not one to speak for Pauline. I don't know how to interpret it. But she talked about us being a multi-racist country or a multicultural country. What's the difference? And David, to you, what is Australian culture? We are built up on people from all corners of the earth. And Kelsey said to me, what do you think it is? I said, well, a fair go, obey our laws, work hard, respect the law of the land. And as Christ once said, do to your fellow man as you'd have him do to you, all that sort of stuff. And what a wonderful country it is that I grew up next to Germans who were bilingual. My son, his wife is from Brazil, and so he's learnt Portuguese, and now my granddaughter is learning both languages. And how wonderful is that? So just in your opinion, what is the definition of Australian culture?
Yeah, and it's a really good question. I don't think anyone's ever nailed it because I think it's pretty simple, and I think you've articulated it. It's just about doing unto others as you expect onto you and having a go and being rewarded for it. If you have a go, you get a go in Australia. And there's a reward for effort, but there's also got to be a consequence and a deterrent for doing the wrong thing. And if you live within those simple boundaries, you live to give back to this country, then this is why it's made it such a great place. It's not complicated. It's some deep ideological thought. It's simply about getting on with your life, enjoying your life, but knowing that if you have a go, there'll be reward for it at the other end. And you can enjoy that, but you've also got to give back. Australia's not about what you can get out of it. It's also what you can give to it. For us, it might be a little bit different out in regional areas, but you see that. People are part of the little communities and they just love and thrive to be part of the local show or the local fete or whatever the celebration may be. And the whole town comes out and they all give. They all donate, but they all actually give their time because they want to be part of a community. And giving back is just as important to this country as taking from it. There's a lot you can get out of this country if you work hard for it. But there's also an opportunity to give back to make sure our country's stronger for it. And I think that's what our forefathers have done. If you look at what the society that we've been handed in our generation, we've been handed one from a generation of Australians that worked hard, that loved their country, that gave back. They gave themselves to the country, but they actually used what was here to make a stronger country, not just for them individually, but in totality as a nation. Their strength, their success was built and built this country to give opportunity to the next generation. And I think that's what we've got to understand is we're going to hand over a society to the next generation. I don't think it's in the right place at the moment. I think multiculturalism is important. My wife was born in Hiroshima. She's half Japanese, but she's come here. Her culture is important to her and her mother, who's full Japanese, and her grandmother, who's still in Japan.
Do you speak Japanese?
No, wouldn't have a clue. I use Google Translator.
You didn't? You haven't made an effort?
So Amelia's, she was basically born in Hiroshima, but they came back and she was educated in Australia.
Yeah.
And so her mother still speaks Japanese, but her dad's Australian. He was in the oil rigs, worked for Mitsubishi, and Amelia's mother worked for Mitsubishi, and that's where they met in Japan. So they came back.
That's another story.
Came back to Australia. And but Bachan, who's Amelia's, that's what they say for grandmother, is still... Yeah. She lives just out of Hiroshima in Yamaguchi, and we're going to go and see her. She's 91. She was actually about 6 or 7 when the bomb was dropped on Hiroshima.
Wow.
But her father took her and her sister and brother out of Hiroshima and her mother out of Hiroshima about a month before the bomb dropped because he suspected something was – because it was a garrison city as well, and he suspected if the Allies came that he needed to get his family out. And about a month after he took them south away from Hiroshima, the bomb dropped. So they lived in the middle of Hiroshima.
So they knew something was coming. They would have had no idea of what was coming.
No, but they sensed that the Allies were obviously making an advance on Japan. So he thought he needed to get his family out of Hiroshima. It was a big city. It was a city that was a garrison city. And I can't remember whether it wasn't where the Allied troops were, so it sort of made it a target. There was some sort of thought process that he had to get the family out of Hiroshima. So, but then they went back as part of the rebuild and lived in Hiroshima, and that's where my wife was born. She was, and her mum grew up in Hiroshima.
Because the other one was Nagasaki. One of them One of them was only decided on the day, I understand, because of weather. And they didn't have clear vision of the original city they were going to drop it on. So they chose either Nagasaki or Hiroshima. I can't remember which one, but one of them was a last-minute thought.
Yeah, and Kyoto was also on the list, but the general who made the decision actually honeymooned in Kyoto and didn't want a city as beautiful as Kyoto blowing up. He intervened, so Kyoto was actually on the list, high on the list as one of the sites that should have been bombed.
Yeah, I think Hiroshima was planned. Pardon me,
yeah.
It was Nagasaki that was a last-minute decision. That's it. That's right, because Hiroshima was first. Yep.
So yeah, and that's the multicultural story, whether it's big Japanese or whatever it may be. You know, and I was growing up in Chinchilla. I got to say, we didn't have a lot of ethnic diversity out there. I mean, but it's a good thing, and now we do see it. And I see our towns out there with Vietnamese who work, and they're bringing a work ethic to our country. So it's not all a bad thing. And I think multiculturalism brings diversity, but brings some of the work ethics and some of the values. And that's why our immigration policy is important. It shouldn't be just on numbers. It should be on standards and the values they bring in why they're coming to this country and what they can add, and build on what that former generation before us did, worked hard, reward for effort, and gave back to their country. And I think there are countries around the world. I think, the Vietnamese, there's a lot of Asian countries that we brought people into that have made great success. The Italians in Stanthorpe have done an amazing job because of the work ethic and the values that they brought to our country. And so we can do this. We shouldn't cut it off. We still need migration. We shouldn't be naive to that. We just don't need as many, and we need to pick the skills we need and the values that we need.
We have the right to be fussy.
Totally.
And are we wise to have people move to Australia whose ideology is a radical form of Islam, where they believe the ultimate goal is to be a martyr and to, if need be, kill yourself in the name of Islam, radical Islam? I'll say that. I'll make sure I say radical Islam. But if that's your ideology, why would you invite someone to your country who is immediately going to hate you?
Exactly. And you shouldn't. And that's exactly the policy that we've always had, is that we've got to reduce the numbers but lift the standards. We've let people come in that have an ideology that doesn't agree with our way of life. So why would we allow those people in? We need to vet stronger in making sure we understand their ideology. In this day and age, I can tell you, not just through social media searches and online searches, our intelligence agencies have the ability to interview people and understand it. And when they bring people in, they should. Those 3,000 Palestinians should have gone through that process. Instead, they're brought in on a holiday visa. There are good people of the Islamic faith, but there are those that have extreme views. We had them here that went over and fought for Islamic State overseas, and because they lost, now want to come back. I don't think they should be allowed to come back straight away. You can't stop someone who has Australian citizenship from coming back. That's their right under the Constitution. But if they have dual citizenship, we shouldn't allow them back. But we can also have a temporary exclusion order that excludes them for up to 2 years. And I think you can extend that out because they went over to start an Islamic State. Now, why would you allow them to come back? I understand there's kids.
Were they coerced? Do we know that? Were they coerced? Were they under enormous pressure?
Well, this is the.
So we don't know.
Point of conjecture.
And there are children involved.
Well, this is the point of conjecture where I think our intelligence agencies need to be able to understand, were they coerced or did they go over on their own volition? Secondly, with the children, I have deep sympathy for the children. But also, I'll just say to you, ask young Matilda, who was shot at Bondi, ask her parents about extreme Islam and about letting people in and about their children, their daughter. In government, sometimes you've got to make tough decisions. And it's not always about the right of the individual. It's about the right of the country as a total. And you've got to be prepared to make those tough decisions for the greater good. There is consequence, but that's unfortunately your responsibility, is to keep your people safe. And sometimes there's a tough consequence to that, but I'd rather look after the greater good than the individual if there's a risk. And that's the tough decisions I don't think this government's been prepared to make.
Hey, listen, I'm dying to talk to your colleague, Pat Conahan, who was the member for Cowper, and he will be able to throw a lot more inside light on this next story, but this is unbelievable. The biggest cocaine bust in Australia's history has just happened at Richmond, west of Sydney. 8 people have been arrested. David, 2.7 tons of cocaine. over $800 million worth street value. And there's a lot of organisation that's gone into this. My information is that it was in a shipping container that was buried, but it was underneath that buried shipping container. The shipping container had a false floor with like a dugout underneath it, and they have found this. Obviously, the AFP, the police, have done an enormous job. Our intelligence agencies have obviously been covering this, I would say, for 6 months, maybe years. I don't know. But from what I understand, the price that cocaine users pay in Australia is amongst the highest in the world, which makes it an attractive place for cocaine to come to because you get a bigger bang for your buck profit-wise. And this is going to push the price of cocaine up, this bust. Christ, 2.7 tonnes. It's an enormous amount of cocaine. As I said, your colleague, Pat Conahan, will be able to shed some interesting light on this. He's an interesting character, and we'll do our best to try and get in touch with him. But what do you make of this bust?
Well, it is enormous. Pat was actually a former undercover police officer in the New South Wales.
That's why
police.
I want to talk to him, yeah.
And he undertook an undercover project for about nearly 2 years, I think it was. He tells the story down here. It's a pretty hard job to be undercover, entrenched in a criminal gang, drug gang. And he had a couple of close experiences. I won't tell you what they are. Let him tell it, where people of his childhood recognised him in probably not the most appropriate time for him. So, these men and women in our intelligence agencies and police forces do an amazing job. And it took him, they got the bust in the end, but it took years. And I remember even out west of where I live, out in the Jericho Forest near Inglewood, the biggest marijuana farm was found about 6 or 7 years ago. They'd run poly pipe all over this property between Inglewood and Warwick and were watering marijuana plants, and the locals could see these trucks coming in and out with the same logs on it. Anyway, the locals started to go to the police, and the police said, no, it's right, don't worry, we know. But the police did know, and they just said, we'll investigate, and kept it going. That went on for over a year, and the locals used to get pretty upset. They're going, something's going on there.
Yeah.
And then when it did bust, they came in with choppers, and they found all these sort of things across this property, even dugouts and places in trees where they found semi-automatics sitting there. So it was a serious situation. But again, that took probably 18 months of police work before they busted it, because they have to get a conviction. They have to try and get all the way through these gangs right to the top, not just the little guys doing the legwork. So it's an amazing part of our policing, and Pat Conahan was one of those. So I'll make sure he gets in contact with you.
Yeah, he's on the top of my list. I've got to talk to Pat, the member for Cowper, Pat Conahan. What an interesting bloke. Just one last thing on illicit drugs. Pauline Hanson says One Nation's going to cut the tobacco excise by 50% and freeze indexation for 2 years, reducing the price of cigarettes by 35%. These illegal cigarettes to try and combat the illegal tobacco industry, which is rife in this country. I mean, every day you wake up and you hear of another tobacco shop being bombed. What do you think? Lower the excise, lower the price of legal cigarettes to get rid of the criminal element. Is this the answer, Dave?
Pauline's taken a policy of the National Party. That was one we had for the last election. We convinced the Liberal Party that we'd lost at that stage, about $7 billion worth of excise. We're down to about 20% of the market, a little bit less, is now only regulated cigarettes. So what we said back then, and it was a coalition policy, is that we needed to reduce the excise. We needed to regulate vapes, not through pharmacies, but through the corner store. We do it for cigarettes. It can't be under 18. You regulate the product and you cut the excise. You've got to get so there's elasticity in the market. And unfortunately, what I think's happened now is we've entrenched the market behaviour. Because the excise is so high, people are not going to go back to a regulated product. That's where I feel we've actually got to. We are going to have to seriously look at excise on cigarettes, on vapes. And we also took to the election about alcohol as well, over the counter at the pub. I'm a big believer that we're better off to have people at pubs drinking than at home, because you've got trained people behind the bar with RSA. It creates jobs. And from country bloke, the pub is sort of your bastion that brings the community together. Where our excise has got out of control on grog as well, and it's made it unviable for people to go and buy a beer of a Friday night or even take the family out for dinner on a weekend, because it just costs too much. And what we're doing is we're going to do the same to alcohol as what we've done with cigarettes and vapes, is we're going to entrench market behaviour where the black market, the only ones that are winning out of this is organised crime. And what we're going to have a health problem, but we don't have the revenue to pay for the health problem through the excise because we've excised ourselves out of the market. We've got to get back, and if you reduce the excise, you build elasticity in the market, you bring the market back to a regulated model. It has better health outcomes and it has better revenue outcomes for the country rather than for organised crime. And we got this, and I was the first to put my hand up. We followed Greg Hunt on this prohibition model with vapes. We got it wrong, and we said that before the last election, and we needed to change, go back to a regulated model rather than a prohibition model and get cigarettes and vapes on the same, reduce it and get it out and change the market and get elasticity in the market. So this is something we'd been on for over 3 years now.
All right. Let's see what our listeners have to say. I'll let you go. Thank you so much again for a word from our man on the inside. We will chase up Pat Conahan because what an interesting onion he will be to peel.
I will text you his number now.
Okay.
Before I forget.
David Littleproud, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Truckie Tuesday is up next. And it's all made possible thanks to GME, the Aussie experts in communication tech for over 65 years. 10-4, good buddies. Whether you're passing vital road info onto the convoy, calling out a hazard ahead, or telling old mate to get off Channel 40 because it ain't a bloody karaoke bar, GME's got the gear to keep your connection steady and crystal clear. Truckie Tuesday. It's time for another Truckie Tuesday. Talk about what's going on our roads and off our roads. The man behind the wheel of the big Kenworth is Rod Hannifey. And Rod, you're in MacPhee today. Beautiful part of the country. What's the weather doing?
The weather was very dark last night. It did rain a little bit. And it looks like I'm going to sit here for the weekend and find out what it's like for the rest of the weekend. Because we don't know where I'm going yet. It's going to be a surprise package on Monday.
It's a surprise.
Yes.
Roadside surprise. I've got to say, I used to broadcast into MacPhee when we were on the Triple M network.
And whilst I was here at the Roadhouse last night, a truck driver walked up and said, "Rod," he said, "I thought it was you." I said, "Yes." He said, "I used to listen to you when you were on with Luke on Triple M." He was inspired by sort of, what I did. He'd also listened to my podcast on Copy Southbound. We sort of covered a bit of history, and he said he thought it was a good idea. He's got into the trucking industry, went working for a friend. He's now driven bigger gear, and he's waiting for his original friend to buy a new truck. And he said the family was behind it, and he's going well and enjoying it. And thanked me for the inspiration.
Well, it's great. And I miss that Triple M family. And we used to go all around Australia, as you know. That part of Queensland is just fantastic. Well, good luck with your surprise on Monday.
Thank you.
I hope you get there safely. Hey, listen, there's a bit of trucking news we need to talk about, and I'm looking forward to your opinions and all of this. And one of them I find a little bit sad, and it's the shit fight going on in the Lynn Fox family business. Now, Peter Fox is the oldest son of Lindsay Fox, who's now 89, and he's not in the best of health, and it's time that the family take over this huge organisation. And there's a bit of drama going on in the family. What's the story?
Well, mate, I know that Peter has been running it for a long time. Lindsay stepped back from it many years ago.
Yeah.
And whilst he's sort of still got bits and pieces that he's involved with, Peter has been running the majority of it. And look, the last I heard was that Peter had stepped aside in a funny way. I don't have the full detail, and I've only got little bits and pieces like you have, Luke. So I'm interested to hear what you've got, sort of what information you have.
Well, all I know is that Peter and his wife Paula, this is according to online news services, Herald Sun on this occasion, they were blindsided last Monday by a statement circulated internally in the Lynn Fox group. And it was revealed that Lindsay Fox was officially retiring as chairman of Lynn Fox Logistics Australia and New Zealand. The statement issued in Lindsay's name framed Peter's departure as part of a transition into a new governance model involving independent chairs. The statement, which noted Lindsay felt immense gratitude to his son, said Peter has dedicated over 35 years to the logistics business, playing an integral role in its growth and building strong relationships with its customers, suppliers and finances. Peter Fox has been on leave since November. He stepped aside. At the time, it was seen as a temporary move. He's in Europe at the moment looking after other things. it turns out that a battle is enraging within the Lindsay Fox family, and it's been going on for about 10 years, and they've been pitting Peter against his brothers Andrew. Now, Andrew runs the property interests. David manages its airports, which includes Avalon and Essendon. And, of course, the Fox Group have also got a major stake in Australian security. And you remember when Chubb Security was nearly broke because COVID, and then a growing trend in Australia's spending habits that more and more people are tapping and going and not using cash. So there's less cash in the ATMs and the banks for the security guards to come and collect and deliver. So that was under an enormous pressure as well. Anyway, I just think it's sad when you see a long-running family empire sort of imploding when families are pitted against each other. I think it's sad.
Yes. And I suppose we'll only sort of find out what really happens when we hear more decisions from them, because, as you say, it's all sort of being done within the family. And I knew that Peter was overseas. I'd heard that he'd sort of stepped aside. But, mate, where it ends up, it's an enormous conglomerate. It goes far outside of Australia. They've got interests in many other countries. And, as you say, they've been around a long time. I met Lindsay many, many years ago. I've never actually met Peter. From where they started, mate, he started off with one truck, and look where it is now. So let's hope that they can find a way to consolidate and carry it on.
Okay, now you can explain this. This was an article in bigrigs.com.au, and I'd love to give the journalist some kudos, but it just says it's written by a staff writer. It concerns an ongoing reporting into sham contracting in the road industry, and it's actually been cited in 2 parliamentary committee hearings as evidence that government agencies are finally working together to tackle this long-running issue. You have touched on it before. Now, Rod, what's happened is during a Senate estimates hearing on the Economics Legislation Committee, and that goes back June 4, according to the story, Senator O'Neill, this is Senator Deborah O'Neill, quoted comments from Senator Glenn Sterle, who we've spoken to, who said the mood among industry participants had shifted dramatically since agencies began coordinating their efforts. Now, the Australian Taxation Office Commissioner is Rob Heffernan, who has told the committee that sham contracting occurs when an employer incorrectly represents a worker as an independent contractor when, Rod, in reality, they're functioning as an employee. Now, we've talked about this.
We certainly have, mate. And I did speak to Glenn the other day, and I said, was he happy to come on and update us? Of course, there was a blitz. As you said, those agencies got together. They went out. They did some roadside inspections. They found, I think at one stage I heard, a bloke who had been here for 12 years working illegally. They found others who had not complied with their conditions and all those sorts of things. And that's what we've been saying, that the people that employ them, they don't pay them superannuation. They don't pay them long service. They don't pay holidays, any of that stuff. So they then undercut other companies who are paying their drivers properly. And it's been a race to the bottom. And we've had, so many issues. We've had companies going broke. We've had all of those things where this is not the only cause, but it has been a major cause of companies undercutting rates and taking work from those that are doing the right thing. And virtually, it's been around for a long time. There was the odd people that did it, and I suppose it was overlooked. But I fear that it got to the point that everybody sort of said, well, geez, they're doing it, we should do it too. And then it's just become rife within the industry. It's become something that's not just the odd bloke doing it, but it's been major companies that have been fighting one another and cutting the rate. And then, of course, people simply can't survive. Then we had the fuel increase come along, and bang, people that were sort of struggling even then have either A, stepped away, B, decided they can't survive and sold all their gear off. And the real concern is, even again, when you look at the new fines and penalties that are being brought into the industry, you've got all these pressures on the industry. You've got people who have spent 40 and 50 years that have built up a business, and now that business is being wrought out from underneath them because of factors, outside of their control. And what happens when those people with all that knowledge and experience leave the industry? Someone still has to drive the trucks, Luke. And the way it's gone, we're really concerned that we've lost people that have put their heart and soul into it, that have done a good job, and it's just been taken away because the government has sat back. And where we've complained about this for probably 3 to 5 years, this is the first time they've acted. And when they found all this, it's been proven that it's there, that they knew, they did nothing, and they're saying there's a lot more to be done, but we're waiting to see that happen.
This doesn't just happen in the trucking industry. It happens all over the place. And I'll give you an example. My son was working for a tradie, and after a couple of years, he said, I'm going to put you on as a subcontractor. Now, Jacob was working for this bloke 100%.
Yep.
He didn't have any other gigs. Now, I wonder what other workplaces this happens at.
And it's just a rort, mate. Like, we have a lot of overseas people coming here because it's a fantastic place to live. Of course, the wages that they earn here are substantially more than they do overseas. I'm sure, Mr. Trump is trying to put a tariff on us because we're using products that are built with, made with slave labour, and yet, nothing's being done in those countries as much as we are to try and improve the standard of living and all those sorts of things. So it is a global problem, and we're sort of at the end of that chain in some ways that, we managed to do the right thing by our people and others are still trying to catch up. But, mate, it's something where it has had an impact and where the government up until recently, even though we've made a lot of noise, has been very slow to act. Now they're acting, and I know there is more to be done.
Yeah, and the thing is, I said to my boy, what about all your super? 16 years he was with this bloke, and he said, no, I don't want to take it any further because I feel I owe him for teaching me a trade. But still...
Yes, but how long was he there before he transferred him over, Luke? 2
or 3 years, I think.
Yeah. So virtually, he did the right thing at first, but then he's decided to find a way to cut corners, and your son's paid for it as well because, of course, he's been deceived of those entitlements. And look, whether the bloke went on and what happened in the end, and that's part of the trouble, mate. It's been so rife that people have seen everyone else doing it. They've all jumped on the bandwagon, and it's got to a point where it's just, had an enormous toll on industry, and as you say, probably on others as well.
Yeah. Look, for all I know, maybe he paid him extra. Maybe he paid him a really good rate and then called him a subcontractor. I think maybe just to avoid the responsibility of having to do some accounting and look after his sick pay, his holiday pay, and his super.
Well, there was a post put up at some stage, and some people have said, look, I'm happy being paid that way. And as you say, perhaps they're getting above the award or they're getting some other benefit.
Yeah.
But the company is still avoiding paying all those taxes. Therefore, they're cheating the government. And if one person in 10 might be happy with what they're actually getting out of it, the other 9 are being threatened, cheated, or stolen from because the company is not doing it the right way.
Yeah. Okay, I want to talk to you about the price of diesel. Last time we spoke, we talked about how the government has... And mind you, the government on a number of its tax policies is flipping around. So this might change.
Yep.
But the fuel excise cap will be lifted on July 1. Now, that could change. I think it has a lot to do with what happens with Trump and Iran, Israel and the Strait of Hormuz and the supply of petrol and diesel here in Australia. It may ride on all of that. But what's the trucking industry saying if the fuel excise on oil, petrol, I should say, if that cap is lifted on July 1? You would assume that the price of everything's about to go up.
The last time you and I spoke, you said it was being lifted, and then blow me down on the news during the week. I'd heard that it wasn't. So as you say, it's still variable. We're told the war is over, and yet there still seems to be some issues. So again, I don't think I'd bet my house on that one quite yet.
Hey, sorry, Rod, it's my fault. I believed what the politicians were saying. It's... I heard.
Luke, a man with your knowledge.
I heard Chris Bowen, Jim Chalmers, and the Prime Minister say the cap on the fuel excise is going to be lifted July 1, and I believe them. I feel I've let you down.
Oh, you've been cheated, Luke. Nah, look. Mate, the way it's going, if it comes back, like we've been, I suppose, taking from Peter to pay Paul. They dropped the excise. That's restricted some of that increase in fuel. And again, mate, we operate businesses that operate on very small margins. No one had the capacity to absorb an increase like that. We know that fuel is the second highest cost in transport, and it didn't go up a couple of cents. It went up $1 and more, depending on where you were and what you were doing, and it did it within days. So, mate, a lot of people struggled. Some were able to say to their customer, right, you know what's going on. There's a war. Fuel's got to go up. Yep. Others sort of struggled and said, look, the fuel's gone up. Well, too bad, mate. You've got a contract. And we did get a determination that people that had contracts then could charge it on and made sure they got paid it. But again, it was a sort of an after thing. You'd already been absorbing it for 2 weeks or a month before that happened. And then we got people who simply went to their boss and said, mate, I can't survive. Too bad, I'll get somebody else. And then, of course, they would have been looking for sham contractors. So, mate, it's had an impact. The fact that the government listened and did reduce the excise, they're still getting their GST, of course, so they're not actually giving the whole lot away. And yet, until that war is over, until the fuel supply is guaranteed, and until we have some level of stability, those factors are still impacting on transport businesses. We've lost so many, and yet the freight still has to be moved, Luke. They're saying again the transport task will double in the next 20-odd years, so that stuff's got to move. We don't have all autonomous trucks without drivers yet. We don't have really fuel-efficient electric vehicles. They're not going to survive on long haul. So we can't fix it today or tomorrow. So we have to have some mechanism in place. And at this stage, until it's guaranteed the war is finished, the fuel supply is stable, and maybe then they should lift the excise. So we don't know whether they're going to extend it for a month or whatever. I suppose we'll have to wait and see when they've actually done it, Luke, compared to what they say they're going to do.
Okay, because I've got two different sources here. I've got an article that we spoke about that was written in the Australian last Tuesday morning, and I'm going to the NRMA website. Now, the NRMA website says, this is 4 days ago, the fuel excise in Australia is expected to be fully reinstated July 1, despite an admission from the federal government that it's considering extending relief measures beyond that initial 3-month commitment. So the NRMA is saying, the fuel excise is expected to be back on July 1. Now, just let me go to this story that we talked about on Tuesday on Channel 7 Sunrise. Anthony Albanese is considering new cost of living measures and extending the $2.5 billion fuel excise cut beyond June. Donald Trump has confirmed expectations of the formal agreement with Iran would be struck at an historic meeting in Geneva later this week. Now, this is last Tuesday. The president vowed that he would end the war and let the oil flow. So now we have, it was off, this deal between the United States and Iran, it was on Tuesday.
Yep.
It was off on Wednesday. It was halfway there on Thursday. And now it seems as though there is an MOU, a Memorandum of Understanding, Rod, and that everything's going to be hunky-dory. So can I just be honest? I'm confused.
It should be, mate. Yes, we all are, and we have been for some time. And, of course, the factor in it that we're all waiting to see whether Trump does have sufficient control, if that's the word, or weight with Israel, that they can come to some solution, because it's like 2 wars within one and there's 5 different sides. So, yes, whether they do solve it, mate, we all really want it to be sorted. I don't think anybody wants Iran to have nuclear weapons. And, of course, he's saying that should they in the future have them, the world will come crashing down on them. Well, geez, it's taken a while to get to this point, and he thought he came crashing down on them, and they don't think that he did. So how are we supposed to know, mate?
Well, look, you've got all these players. It's not just the United States and Iran. It's also Israel. And it also depends on recognised terrorist organisation Hezbollah. So you've got all these players, and I forget who it was. It may have been Winston Churchill, who said, diplomacy, the art of diplomacy is telling your enemy to get and then them saying, please, can I have directions? A UHF isn't just an accessory. It's a lifeline. It's exactly why I'm stoked to have GME on the Bonafide Podcast. They're the only Australian manufacturer of UHF CB radios and emergency beacons, operating right out of a purpose-built HQ in Sydney. You want to know how many locals they keep in steady work? 250. And the gear they build doesn't just keep the Bonafide family safe on the road. It's engineered specifically to handle the bull dust, the corrugations, and the longest hauls you can throw at it. If you love Truckie Tuesday, back the brand that backs us. Head over to gme.net.au. That's gme.net.au. Links are in the description. Let's get back to the chat. Now, we keep talking about the NHVR, the National Heavy Vehicle Regulator. The latest news is that it's hoping to empower Australian truck operators with in-depth knowledge on non-compliance and vehicle intercepts through a new free compliance tool to be made available to everyone in the industry. After it was first launched in April for operators who are part of the National Heavy Vehicle Accreditation Scheme, the regulator will now give the wider industry access to use the new Look tool. Now, Paul Salvati, who is the Chief Operations Manager with the NHVR, says the tool is the next stage in the regulator's push to lower non-compliance across heavy vehicle fleets in Australia. What's all this about?
Every time you get intercepted by the NHVR, there is a report made. So if you've got a non-compliant vehicle or a non-compliant driver, they eventually end up with a report. And up until April, when they launched that, they were the only ones that knew. They would come out and say, we found these 5,000 fatigue breaches last year, but they wouldn't tell us what they were or how bad they were or who was involved in them. And they're saying now that if you're a company, Fred Nurk Transport, so Fred Nurk Transport's a member of compliance, he can dial into this new device they have, the new portal, and see where he sits. So he can see how many infringements there have been and all those sorts of things. It's only been available to them. Now they're going to say they're making that public so anybody can dial in and see, how they've been found and where they fit into the scheme. Now, NHVR say that they use compliance tools and that for enforcement, for targeted enforcement. So if Fred Nurk's had a really bad run and he's had a heap of trucks stopped and they've all had defects and the drivers have all been non-compliant, they then target Fred Nurk and say, right, mate, we're going to be on you, we're watching you, and then the intent is that those that are doing the right thing don't receive such a level of scrutiny because they've got a good record, they're doing the right thing, and Fred cops it and they chase him down and they see why he's doing these things, why his drivers are breaking the law, why his trucks are failing. So that there has been something that's been in the background. They've said they've used targeted enforcement, but we've never known how and why really, other than, from the fact that they've recorded all those incidents, and now they're saying they're going to make that open and available. But it's very interesting, Luke. They're saying they're trying to improve non-conformance. We agree with that. We want that improved. But it seems that they're also after drivers. Now, I've had 2 phone calls this week of drivers who have made a mistake. Yes, it's been a reasonably severe mistake, but that's what it is. Nobody died. Nobody, got run off the road. There was no accident involved, but a driver's been found to have made a serious breach. They've gone to court and they've been threatened with phenomenal fines. Now, we talked about the big increase in fines, and they're saying that they only apply to those who are repeat offenders. Now, neither of these people were repeat offenders. They'd had a record, but not a serious one, like 9 incidents over 30 years. Now, that's not what you would call someone who's an absolute bloody Fruit Loop and doing the wrong thing every day. And yet, the penalties they are handing out are far higher than like first offender things. The fact that those fines and increases have gone through and they will flow through to lower offences as well, because that's the way the system works. And it's really concerning to me that they are taking such a big rod to people who have been in the industry for so long. They don't see that there is a factor that, should we have those drivers leave and say, no, that's it, I've done now, look at this is how they're going to treat me. There was one driver in court, someone who represented him, he was threatened with a $20,000 fine, and the bloke actually broke down in court and cried because had it gone through, he didn't know how he was going to survive, how he was going to pay it, how he'd feed his family. And I'm concerned that they don't see that when they go that hard on individual drivers, yes, for a mistake. They should be punished. They've done the wrong thing and they've got to learn better. But if we lose those drivers, Luke, we see what happens on the road when untrained and unskilled people are put behind the wheel. And I think that there is a correlation that we can see on the road where people with years and years of experience are being forced out. Sometimes we believe unjustly, but certainly threatened and punished. And then, of course, they go away and then we get someone else who's on the bums in seats mentality. Geez, that truck's sitting there. I've got to get somebody in it. Can you drive? Yep, quick, be in Melbourne in the morning, mate.
Yeah.
So, there is a correlation, and the fact that they're doing these things with an intent to improve it is good.
Mm.
But I want them to be more open with us as to what their long-term intent is.
All righty. If you've got any feedback, please let us know. Leave us a voice message on 0291 289311 or just log on. In our description, there's easy instructions on how to get in touch with us. I want to ask you a question that we have talked about before, but it's often asked by my non-trucking listeners. Can you please ask Rod, why is it that we hear of trucks, oversized trucks trying to get under bridges and getting stuck so often? Surely the trucking industry and the drivers know the height of their vehicle and the height of the bridge. Why do we hear about this so often? Now, Rod, are the penalties high enough? If you drive a truck under a bridge and you're too high, and you should know if you're the driver, what are the penalties and should they be increased?
Well, mate, from that raft of increases that we had, and there has been a reduction from that peak, probably 2 years ago, when blokes hit bridges. Now, there's two sides to it, Luke.
And the bloody Harbour Tunnel, but anyway.
Yes, again. Look, there's two sides to it. The average height of trucks is 4.3 metres. That's a standard height for a normal Pantech or a fridge van or a taut liner. Now, in the last raft of increases, we spoke of they're increasing the weights to CML. They're also going to allow 20-metre single-length trailers where they've been 19. And they're going to allow more 4.6 height trailers. Now, in the past, for you to operate a 4.6 height trailer, you had to apply for it, you had to have permits, and there is a very restricted route available for 4.6 because many of the bridges are designed where we've had 4.3 for many, many years. And yet they're going to allow 4.6. That worries us because we think there might be some more bridge strikes. Most trailers that are above 4.3 will have a sign on them. Most drivers are aware if they tow them all the time. If you pull 5% trailers in the day, you don't look at the fifth one happens to be 4.6 and you hit a bridge, that's a problem. But that's the standard fleet. Then you talk about oversize, overmass, and open trailers where you go and put a load on. And I've actually had this happen, Luke. Go and pick this up. Mm-hmm. It's they needed a low trailer, and you'll be right. I said, okay, go and pick it up, load the thing on. So, geez, that looks high. Mm-hmm. You're going to tape measure here? What do you want that for? We've told you that it's only 3.4. I said, yeah, but, the trailer's 1.2 and that makes 4.6 and that's not a standard height and we better check this.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, righto, 5.1. So, look, and then I had to ring up and I said, look, this is not what they told us, blah, blah, blah. So, again, it is the driver's responsibility. But the company know that if it's too high, you're going to charge them more because you've got a detour. You've got to get people out to help you. Yeah. So, and again, mate, you try and measure something that's 5 metres high at one point over a 20-metre load on a trailer where there's all these different parts and pieces, and you try and stand on the side of the road on your own with a tape measure and get it to go up 5 metres in the air. Yeah. So that's not an excuse. We still have the responsibility, but sometimes the customer doesn't tell the truth. Sometimes they simply don't know either. And then, unfortunately, people say, yep, that's what they told me, mate, and away they go, and they hit something. And look, it could be a power line. It could be anything like that. So, again, the average driver who drives, taut liners, fridge vans, they don't have to worry about it. Maybe today they've sent him off to do something else with an open trailer and he's not used to doing that. There's a whole range of factors. It is training, it is experience, and it is, having the customer be aware of what their load is as much as the driver as well.
What are the fines? I would assume it's the driver that's ultimately responsible. If you drive an overheight truck and get stuck under a bridge, the fine it's the driver's fault. It's the driver that's fined. What are the fines?
Well, mate, it went up substantially when we had those. I think it's licence disqualification and substantial amounts of money now. So it did from where we had, that raft of bridge strikes and it all went bad there for a while. They did go up substantially, and it's not insurmountable. It's not insignificant at all. And yet there was another bloke, mate, who activated the overheight beam before one of the tunnels. Yeah. And he pulled up and he said, mate, I'm not overheight. Yeah, the system went off. Mate, there was a bird flew by. They actually had a photo of it.
Yeah, that's right. I remember that one.
Yeah, and they were fining him mega dollars and taking his licence off him. And he said, measure the bloody thing. It's sitting there in front of you. So again, the system is not absolutely perfect. But as you say, there are penalties, there are warnings, there are signs, there are flashing lights, and it is the driver's responsibility. He cops it first. He might be able to say, well, these people lied to me, but they're going to say, did you measure it? And, of course, if you didn't measure it, you're wearing it.
Okay, I've just done a quick Google. In New South Wales, and this includes getting stuck in the Harbour Tunnel.
Yep.
This is according to AI.
Yep.
There is an on-the-spot fine of $4,097.
Yep.
There is a minimum court fine of up to $5,500. And with heavy vehicles, demerit points, 12 points. Immediate loss of licence for heavy vehicle drivers, 12 points, which means exactly that.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, so I knew it was lost licence. I thought the fine amount had actually gone up higher than that, and it may well be. And of course, it varies in different states. But look, if you're going to take something that's not standard, go and measure it. But even then, look, we see signs, and I'm sure you've seen it in America as well, where blokes will be driving up to a sign and you can see it says 3.4 metres and they just plough straight into it. So, some people don't have the knowledge and skills to be truck drivers, Luke.
Yeah, don't start Ray Hadley on the Galston Gorge. Jesus.
Definitely not.
Definitely not. Last thing, what is the Lights on the Hill convoy and how come it's not running this year?
Well, there you go. I wasn't aware that it wasn't. Now, the Lights on the Hill, and it's funny, I actually stopped at the Lights on the Hill Roadhouse in Hewenden. I wasn't aware it was there.
The story is the Lights on the Hill convoy will not be running this year. Organisers announcing over the weekend the event's been postponed to 2027. The event this October will not be run due to economic pressures being felt across the Australian transport industry, with organisers recording a live message at the memorial over the weekend to announce the news. That's all I know.
Yeah. So the Lights on the Hill started in Gatton. It was one of the first Truckies Memorial, and it's like a 2-day thing. So they normally have a service on the first day where the names of drivers who have been killed in the industry are added on to the memorial, and it's the Lights on the Hill. Slim was the patron, Slim Dusty from that song, Lights on the Hill, that Joy McKean wrote.
And the lights on the hill, blinding me or something.
That's the one, yes, coming over the hill of blinding.
That's it,
yes. And so, it's been going for many, many years, and then they'd have a convoy where one started from Brisbane and one started from Toowoomba, and they both met at Gatton. And look, it's grown to the point where they overcame the first venue. They went to the showground, and it wasn't big enough. It's been very successful over the years. It does raise funds for the industry, but obviously, as they're saying there, it's not quite like live music and its concerns into the future with people and tickets and prices and all that sort of stuff, mate. But people do come from far and wide to take part in it. It's another cost where we as drivers and owners, they put the gear up, they spend all day polishing, they go out there and they spend a day there, and it's been a really good industry event. But they must think that there's sort of too much pressure to justify it, or they've had people say, look, I don't know if we can come, or, things like that, and they've decided to defer. So, look, their decision, they run it, they must know how it's affecting people, and we can only hope that it comes back bigger and better next year.
Because there is another famous Light on the Hill celebration. Are you aware of this?
No.
It's in Bathurst every year, and it's the famous Labor Party Light on the Hill dinner.
I wasn't aware of that one.
Yeah, and it's in memorial of Ben Chifley, who was from Bathurst. He was a train driver, remember?
Yes,
and
Prime Minister.
Yeah, and it's basically a get-together of Labor Party faithful. Everyone goes to it. It's where I got to meet Kim Beazley, and it's where we became friends. He was in Bathurst for the Light in the Hill dinner. He was the keynote speaker because Bob Hawke was overseas, and so Kim Beazley was the acting Prime Minister. Anyway, in 1949, Ben Chifley famously addressed the New South Wales Labor Party conference, and in the speech he described the ultimate goal of the Labor Party as the light on the hill, a beacon for representing the betterment of mankind. So there you are. That's the famous Labor Party light on the hill. It's a memorial dinner that's held in Bathurst every year. So I just thought I'd mention that.
Yes, something else I knew.
See? You've just learned something else.
Oh, absolutely, mate. Yes, you do. And then the day you stop learning is the day you die, mate. People that think they know everything, well, we know what they know.
I hate people who think they know everything because I know more. Hey, listen, Rod, I enjoy Mackay, and good luck with your roadside roulette destination for Monday. Let us know how it goes and any last thoughts. I want Rod's rave or Rod's rant.
Mate, I've got to say we've spoken about lights and people's use of them. Again, during the week, a couple of caravans that have gone and bought replacement headlights, or they've gone and put their wanker fog lights on, and they've replaced those with really high, powerful, bright white lights. And while the van is sitting in your driveway, it might look really cool. But when you get out on the highway and you start bumping up and down the road, it's like being flashed with high beam. The same if you're a tradie and you've gone and bought these new replacement headlights and they look really cool and they're bright, and then you go and load your cement and your tools and everything in the back of the ute, and you forget then that it's up in the eyes of people. Mate, it is just another one of those factors, particularly in mist and rain, that wears your eyes out, that makes it so much harder to drive safely. And I ask people to think, before they go and fit them, there is a law that says that you can't fit them unless the vehicle has a self-levelling suspension above a certain brightness. But, of course, they don't tell you that when you go to the shop. They want to sell you the brightest and the dearest ones. So, for goodness sake, when you're out on the highway, I suppose the overall message, Luke, is to think of others and certainly think of others coming towards you. The government has done something now with this divided centre line. And I used to say many years ago, when you've got 20 centimetres of paint between you and an oncoming vehicle on the highway at a closing speed of 200 kilometres an hour, you've got to consider what the other person is doing, is seeing, is aware of. So the wide centre line has given us a little bit more than that 20 centimetres of paint. But, mate, we're there to share the roads. I'm sure you heard the RACQ in Queensland saying the toll is rising. They want the government to spend money. Geez, mate, I come up the Bruce Highway. There's some roadworks on there. Yes, they're spending it. But goodness me, mate, I lost well over an hour from Brisbane to Mackay. I had people sitting here actually waiting for me, so I was trying to get there in time to not make them delay any longer. There was an accident coming out of Brisbane. There was a major hold-up there. There was the last set of roadworks I didn't know was there, and sort of meant that I was nearly not going to make it at one stage. So we want the work done, and we want the workers to stay safe.
Yeah.
And the last part of it, Luke, in one of those sets of roadworks, of course, the road worker said, you bloody truckies need to slow down. Now, I was doing 29 kilometres an hour in a 40K zone.
Yeah.
So I don't think it was me. Whether one was behind me, and we're all in a queue, Luke, so no one's doing, 47 kilometres an hour. And I don't know whether one had caught up a little bit or something. But instead of the truckie saying, mate, I'm only doing 37 in your 40 zone, I'm watching what you're doing.
Yeah.
He came back and it started a rage of abuse. Now, that didn't help how we're seen. It didn't help the road worker because in the end he got just as volatile. And we don't want them hurt or killed. We just want a fair go. We want good value for our roadworks. And if you can't say something nice, then shut up.
That's Rod's rant. I've got some great news for you, Rod. You're talking about headlights flashing up into your face because people forget about the load they've got on. One of the big perpetrators, according to our listeners, are caravans. They hook them up maybe once or twice a year and forget that now their headlights are pointing upwards.
Mm-hmm.
we may have more caravans on the road for more time. The latest news is that our educators and the teachers' union are actively lobbying the New South Wales government for a shorter school year and more extended holidays. The reason? To reduce burnout. So they want more holidays and shorter terms. So we may have families with caravans on the road more often, just to cheer you up.
Oh, mate, something to look forward to. Yes. The one that was doing 85 kilometres an hour yesterday made it very, very difficult to get past because the cars just sat behind him as well. So, yes, no good when you've got a long way to go. We've got to be fair about it. And we do need more overtaking lanes, and let's hope that everybody that we talk to gets home safe this trip and thinks of others they share the road with, Luke.
As we get closer to the next set of school holidays, we might talk to somebody from we've talked about this, but we'll have to do it. We'll get someone from the Australian Caravan Association or whatever to come on and we'll have a talk to them.
We will. And if we can educate some of them, Luke, again, you've given me an opportunity to get to people, and yes, we get a lot of truckies listen and they know half the stuff that we talk about, and we do try and give them other information. But, with this show and with Triple M, we get a lot of people outside the industry, as you say. And we don't get a chance to talk to them any other way unless you're in a roadhouse and they come up and say g'day. And quite often that's not the case as to what happens. But, mate, we offer information and education, and if people take it on and listen, that's all that we can ask. But there's a lot of people out there that don't know where to get that knowledge from, and whether it's, as you say, asking a simple question about something or why truckies do this or do that, we're more than happy to try and explain, because we do want to share the road. We do want to get home safely, and we do want people to survive. And the way things are going, mate, we seem to be struggling, and it seems to be getting worse, and that's very sad.
Rod, you safe driving, mate. Enjoy Mackay, as I said, and we'll talk to you next week.
Safe travelling to all, Luke.
Well, that's it. A big, massive cheer for the folk at GME. Thank you for keeping the Aussie transport industry talking. It's engineered specifically to handle the bull dust, the corrugations, and the longest hauls you can throw at it. Head over to gme.net.au. That's gme.net.au. Links are in the description, and we'll see you next week. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for being part of it. Thank you for your contributions. Keep them coming. Keep them pouring in. And if you've got a parrot, we want to hear it. This parrot, which I'd purchased from this boutique not 1.5 hour ago, on its arrival home, I realised the only reason it had been sitting on its perch in the first place was that it had been nailed there. Have you heard the parrot sketch from Monty Python? Are we allowed to play it?
No.
What, the Norwegian blue? Beautiful plumage. No. Look, the plumage don't enter into it. This parrot is deceased. It is no more. It's rung up the curtain and joined the choir in vestibule. It is an ex-parrot.
Do you ever thought of the day? Or is that the thought of the day?
Of course it was nailed there. If I had nailed that parrot down, it would have muscled up a little pecker, pulled apart those bars and vroom. This parrot wouldn't vroom if you put 12,000 volts up its ass.
Is that the thought of the day?
Yeah. It's about work. I love work. Do you love work?
No.
I could sit and look at it all day.
Ha. Bye.